Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of rapid fire racing action in the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series Season 12 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. We continue the story of the season today with round number 7 to 10 and we have made our way all the way to France for the infamous Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. Named after the two towns it is in close proximity to, both Nevers and Magny-Cours, this is a circuit that is no stranger to international motorsport. Whether it be the French Formula 1 Grand Prix of previous years, GT World Challenge Europe, you name it, it's raced here. And we're a circuit that takes inspiration from circuits around the globe, including the Australian circuit of Adelaide and also the German circuit of Nürburgring. It's a circuit that has both borrowed characteristics and also some unique ones of its own. And its core, however, is a very challenging 2.74 mile layout, where with 17 corners, it's one that seems to be rather difficult to overtake at, and track position is going to be absolutely critical here. Whilst overtaking is going to be possible, particularly in some of the heavier braking zones, with a number of chicanes and sweepers around this circuit, Dirty Air is going to play its part, and with it drivers may wish not to find themselves falling apart when the trails of another rival. Instead, being clear out in front could be critical. Alternatively, finding a bit of clear track to usurp your roles on strategy could be just as key. But who exactly is going to be able to find victory? Well, that's what we're here to find out today in this post-round broadcast from Circuit Side. Because where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this post-round broadcast. We're taking a look back at all the racing action from Wednesday the 1st of April 2026. But don't be fooled, it's not an April Fool's joke as we bring you all the racing as if it were live this Thursday the 2nd of April. Therefore, we do not know what happens in the practice session, which is currently unfolding in the background, nor the upcoming qualifying session, or most importantly, the race, and therefore it's going to be as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning into home. Of course, you're catching all this racing action on the one only place you can do so for this season on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and search for Porsche Productions or PWP, and you can be catching it all there on a weekly basis. And in terms of our schedule for today, times in Eastern Daylight Time, EDT, or Universal Coordinate Time -4, UTC -4, as we can see in approximately what will be about 5 to 10 minutes time, we make our way into our qualifying session, 20 minutes in duration, set to get underway at 10 past 10 this evening, after which we'll be then taking a brief breather before making our way to the grid for our one and only 60-minute Grand Prix race. Our feature-length race due to get underway at 25 to 11, and if the previous rounds are anything to go by, this is certainly going to be a thriller. In the content, if you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action over the course of this season, and we of course do give a big shout out to our sponsor for this Grand Prix, because this is formerly known as Le Very Franche Grand Prix. Indeed, mon dieu, it's a brilliant sponsorship name, and we have to give a big thank you there to Captain CK in his number 50, the privateer, who put the sponsorship together for this round of racing. But as we come into this round, well, let's not give you any more sacre bleu. Let's take you up to speed with the racing that's occurred over the opening 6 rounds, and particularly the stories of Kota last time out, and indeed what a round it was in round number 6. For as we can see, we continue our tour around the globe, but after this round, it will be back to the US of A, we'll go, and that's where we'll stay for the remainder of the season. Indeed, we've travelled around Europe, we've made our way to Canada, you name it, we've been there, but here we are today in France on the Magny-Cours Grand Prix circuit. Last time out, on the 25th of March, we were at the Circuit of the Americas, the Texas two-step circuit in the Lone Star State, and what we got to see there was an absolute race-long epic. Indeed, we had 2 drivers challenge for the victory. On the one hand, we of course had the five-time winner. He's won every race so far going into that round. It was none other than Knotavin. And in the other corner, we had TonLo, and the two of them went the entire distance. However, it was intrigue straight away in qualifying, whereby we got to see that TonLo took an absolutely dominant pole position, and he seemed absolutely keyed in with the setup of the car. Conversely, Knotavin could not find the right setup on the car, and it looked so it was a car that had plenty of understeer and oversteer in equal measure. And whilst he was able to dial out the understeer on the corner entry, he was not able to dial out the oversteer and corner exit, and what it did mean was that when we did go green flag racing, it was all looking to be green for TonLo to take his first victory. However, a mistake into turn number 1 suddenly saw Knotavin take the lead, and TonLo had to chase him down aggressively over the entire distance, and towards the very end of the race, a move was made for the win. Indeed, there was one earlier, but there was contact between the two of them, and it did mean that TonLo gave the place back, but going in towards turn number 11 with only a few laps to go, TonLo went all in, got his elbows out, there was a bit of contact between the two drivers, and he took victory on the road. He thought he'd brought the victory run of Knotavin to a halt after 5 rounds. It finally came to a stop, and we had a new winner at the end of round number 6. Well, at least That's what we thought had happened on the road, but post-round stewarding saw that instant, the contact to the victory for TonLo versus Knotavin, it was excessive contact, and therefore the win was given back to Knotavin with a 5-second post-race time penalty being applied to TonLo's race, and it meant the victory streak goes on for Knotavin. But whilst there was an absolute epic playing out at the very front of the field between the top two, what exactly happened in the fight for third? Well, it was the first podium of the season for Urko. Had a brilliant drive, and he started in 6th place. He was in no man's land in qualifying, having found himself a long way away from the top 5, but also quite comfortably clear of 7th place starter Pancakes by the best part of 2 attempts. And over the race distance, he was able to gradually move forward, particularly with an open lap incident involving several drivers, Empty Dust, DC, and Cat Daddy, continuing that streak of going from what was lap number 3 all the way back at Motorsport to lap number 2 at Mexico City, and having an incident at Kota on the open lap last time out. Well, I don't know how he's going to be able to have an incident on lap 0 today, unless he has it on the formation lap. I'm not hoping that happens, by the way. Let's be clear right now. But that has been the running trend for Cat Daddy, but it opened up the doorway for Urko, and in the end was able to bring home that win by 1.2 seconds in the end, just ahead of Cat Daddy, who was chasing down the podium but couldn't quite make it happen. So that sets the scene in terms of our podium finishes from last time out, although we do need to give a shout out to Jen, who made her way backwards the grid, albeit technical issues saw her finish 2 laps down after not able to make the start. And also we did have a newcomer onto the grid, and that was Pebble, who made his debut, and we're very happy to see him out there going all the way to the finish. But here we are today in France, and next time out we'll be making our way back to US of A, and next up on the order in round number 8 we'll call Spree at Sebring International Raceway. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's stay with the present, because there's no time like the present, and let's talk a little bit about our host circuit. It is the Grand Prix layout of the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours, located more closely to the village of Magny-Cours in the Nièvre region of the Bourgogne-Franche-Comté state of France. And a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely superb track maps that come with it. Now, many of you may be familiar with this circuit, particularly if you watched Formula 1 throughout the early noughties. Indeed, the first place where a driver was ever to take what was, I believe, 8 wins at a circuit, that being Michael Schumacher. Albeit the French Formula 1 Grand Prix now disposed to the circuit to Paul Ricard, and indeed many a racing series has gone to Paul Ricard rather than Magny-Cours. But why exactly is that? Well, it is because of the remote location of this circuit, and also the fact this is not one of the best circuits for spectators, whereby the grandstands are primarily focused around the run of the Complex de Lycia, turns 15 through to 17, all the way up to the run through Golf Corner at turn number 4. But there's very little spectator visibility around the rest of the circuit, so therefore it's considered not to be as quote-unquote an entertaining circuit. And when you do have high downforce cars around here as well, dirty air really plays a key theme, and it was seen as a bit of a hold in the racing back when it came to Formula 1 and other disciplines. But still, we are racing here because we're going to show you that you can put an absolutely brilliant show at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. And as our drivers roar the way down the start-finish straight and in towards Grand de Curve at turns 1 and 2, it's a double left kink that opens up to the long right-hander Estoril Bend at turn number 3. A tribute there to what I believe is the Brazilian circuit, and as they make the way through the long right-hander at turn number 3, it's then up through Golf at 4, flat out all the way into the heavy braking zone of Adelaide at turn number 5. A tribute to the turn 10 hairpin at Adelaide. Onto the brakes they'll go at the low speed corner of the circuit, and out they'll roar through the kink of 6 and in towards the Nürburgring chicane at turn 7 and 8, which is a tribute to the Wiedel chicane, the medium speed variant of the German circuit. But through the right into left they'll go, and then it's into 180, the long, elongated, heavy trail braking zone, where it completely drives back up themselves at turn number 9, and then they'll go for the kinks at 10 and 11 before making their way into the Imola chicane at turns 12 and 13. There's plenty of elevation change there, and it's going to feel as though it's a much faster variant of the Alta chicane, or Aqua Minerale and meets Alta. But either way, they then come into the Chateau de Eau hairpin at turn number 14, a very sharp cutback right-hander, and then they'll come all the way down the hill, past the chicane, and in towards the Lycée, or the Complex de Lycées. It's 9 in full, a sharp right-hand 90-degree corner at turn number 15, followed up by very tight chicanes to complete the lap and do it all over again, or to finally see that checker flag. Now, before we go racing, of course, we must have some rules, and here's a quick reminder of them. This is an open setup championship, which does mean drivers bring a setup of their choosing to each and every race day session, including qualifying and the race. Drivers are required to drive the Dallara P217 LMP2 machine. Indeed, this season is dedicated to the infamous 2017 Dallara LMP2 racing car, and we look forward to seeing our drivers take on the wonderful V8 machines, those 4.2-litre Gibson engines with 603 brake horsepower at the rear wheels, and see what they can do today. Now, in terms of qualifying, it's an open qualifying format, which means our drivers will be all allowed to go out of the circuit together, and they do have 6 fine laps to set their available qualifying time, which will put them in their position on the grid. Now, our Grand Prix race, well, the race shall commence via a double throttle rolling start, as is the tradition of racing LMP2 machinery, and there are no mandatory pit stop requirements. That's going to be quite interesting. We'll explain why very shortly. Each driver has 2 fast repairs available, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 16 or more instant points. Should they get to 32, they will be disqualified, and all race stewarding shall be conducted post-race. And why will the lack of a mandatory pit stop requirement be interesting today? Well, you may have noticed it briefly in the background pictures when we were at circuit side, and we'll be coming back to it very shortly, but we have had some rain already for at the circuit today, and the forecast is saying the rain is going to come back at certain points, and therefore we could see more pit stops than normal, given the fact that drivers might need to change their tyres from slicks to wets and wets to slicks. But we'll see who exactly is going to get that right as we do make our way back to the circuit side. And as we do, ladies and gentlemen, well, let's bring you up to speed of those championship standings coming into this round. We begin with the Drivers' Championship after 6 rounds, and as we can see, leading at the top with win streak standing, albeit looking fragile, it's Knotavin for Night Racing. 6 wins in 6 rounds, and that gap of 61 points there looks, on the face of it, absolutely dominant. Beginning the fact that TonLo has pushed in the distance now multiple times this season, particularly last time out at the Circuit of the Americas. You've got to imagine the BDS racing driver at some point is finally going to take a win. Could it be today? At the 7th time of asking, can he be finding the lucky number 7? If TonLo does not, well, he's got the threat of playing racing cars' his cat daddy, who wants to return to the podium. He's qualified on the podium on several occasions in qualifying so far, but it's never quite worked out in recent rounds. The playing racing cars driver right now wants to get back into 2nd, as Beaver has fallen to 4th. The Nick Square driver not on the grid last time out, and therefore dropping down a position, but in the number 10 on the 158 points. He's going to be hoping that perhaps he can make his way back forward, but as I double check the entry list, we do not have Beaver here today, so therefore he's going to fall even further into the clutches of the likes of DC, the Bong Life Motorsport driver, who once again had a bit of a frustrating day at the Circuit of the Americas, but definitely did get involved in a lot of fighting and holding on to 5th right now by 12 points over Garlic Dog for playing racing cars. The 199 driver, conversely, continues with some very good performances and also showing that whilst he may be perhaps the number 2 driver of the playing racing cars team, he's always making sure to be able to bring the points home. Nicolator sits in 7th, with Nick Squared having a complete absence on the grid last time out and therefore dropping a bit further down, but ahead of Biker Pilot there by the best part of what is 12, well, in fact, 14 points. Then we do see from the 3.8 racing drive from Canada, it's Night Racing's Jen, picking up some more points and moving back into the top 10, 101, 2 ahead of Pancakes for SimCity Racing, who had a solid result and was able to bring home a great enough result to move into the top 10 once again for this time of the season. Then we do have Urko in length there for Bong Life Motorsport. His first podium of the season, well, he'll be hoping that today he can maintain that momentum and move back into the top 10 as well. Emmy Dust sits in 12th there for Speed Squad, only a point behind, but 3 ahead of Yomega. And behind the 3.8 racing drive, Simply Steve, who's on the grid today for Speed Squad. We look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do, because he's been absent for a couple of rounds. And then you do have a sizable gap, almost double the points, or half the points you could say, to AJ there in 15th place, the Privateer. 16th is Squilliam ahead of Corndog. And then we do have Pebble, Spook Dubs, and Black Bob completing that top 20. And a big shout out there to Pebble, the Privateer, in the all-red machine. I do believe not on the grid today, unfortunately, but making his debut last time out at the Circuit of the Americas and bringing home some very valuable points. But outside that top 20, not to be forgotten about. In 21st, it's Paperbag, head of sector based on result countback, and then we do have 0 points apiece for Sassy and Dickinson, and that is how your 24 standing starting Drivers' Championship is looking at this point in time. But then we come to the Teams Championship, and what exactly do we see here? Well, we do see Night Racing. They lead the way. They've moved back to the top with Nick Squared absence, and it does mean that as a result, Night Racing are able to pick up a huge haul of points, even though, of course, we did see those technical issues for Jen, which belied their performances, and therefore you can imagine it was a missed opportunity, much like at Motorsport. However, they are back ahead of playing racing cars, and the delta between the two teams there, the best part of 25 points. And playing race cars right now, known with another highly consistent double points finish, they've moved from 3rd to 2nd. Could they move to the very top come the end of today? Well, we look forward to seeing them try. Nick Squared have fallen to 3rd, but given the fact that we do have Nicolator back on the grid today, therefore we are expecting they may be able to resuscitate their championship form. How they've got to be aware of the fact that Bong Life Motorsport are steadily creeping towards them, now up in the 4th place of 249. 3.8 Racing, they're on 212. They're starting to break away from Speed Squad, but with Speed Squad back on the grid today, we could see that fight for 5th intensify. And it's BDS Racing in 7th place at 173 points, with TonLo's performances last time out definitely moving the team closer to the top 5. And then we do have a sizable gap there to the tune of 74 points to SimCity Racing, who've almost got double the points of Vision Motorsports, with Cornhub Motorsports and Scuderia DNF completing your team's championship standings. But ladies and gentlemen, that's a recap of the championship standings coming into round number 7. And without further ado, let's get our qualifying session underway. 20 minutes 6 flying laps. Who exactly is going to put it on pole? Well, there's only one way to find out, and here we go. And so, as qualifying gets started, 20 minutes ticks away, and this could be a very interesting qualifying session because we are expected at the moment relatively clear skies with a degree of cloud coming over as time goes on. And we do see Cat Daddy immediately making his way out of the pit lane. Now, you can see a bit of spray coming up from the cars here. Unfortunately, we can't give you the tyre data in terms of what tyres our drivers are running, so we are going to have to try and guess what tyres they're running. But I suspect right now, given how relatively dry the circuit is looking, the fact the spray margins are quite limited, I wouldn't be surprised here if our drivers are running slick tyres, but they're going to need to tread very carefully here with those slick tyres as they make the way around. Now, why is that exactly? Well, in general, for any racing car, wet tyres, they have a tread block on them, which enables the car to displace water as it goes over puddles or patches of water. Of course, if a puddle is big enough, what will happen is the car will essentially ride on top of the puddle. It will aquaplane. It rides on a plane of aqua or water, aqua being the Latin for water there, and that's how you get the term aquaplaning. But the idea being here that you want to try and avoid those puddles wherever possible, and on a slick tyre, well, the difference between a slick and a wet tyre is the slick has no tread block to it. So therefore, a slick tyre is literally what it says on the tin. It cannot displace water very well, and therefore the only way you can displace water with slick tyres, you need as much tyre temperature as possible in a slick, and that way you essentially, as you go over the water, you are trying to evaporate it away off of the tyre compound. But as soon as you lose any temperature in the slick tyre, what ends up happening is the car starts to lose grip, and the car will slide around, and it becomes a domino effect whereby if you lose grip on a slick tyre, you lose tyre temperature because you're not going quick enough to maintain tyre temperature, and subsequently your grip is made even worse, and then it just keeps adding up, and you get the pitch there. You essentially get what is a domino effect, whereby you just get slower and slower, lose all the grip, and you start going around and round. Then you're doing your best impersonation of Dead or Alive, You Spin Me Right Round. But music aside right now, as we do see Pancakes making his way up towards what will be turn number 14, the Chateau. Well, understandably here, if you do go out on the slick tyre, you're going to need to warm it up gradually. Those slick tyres will have tyre blankets, which will give them a little bit of core temperature, but it won't be enough to be able to get them up to optimum temperature. The slick tyre does normally have an optimum temperature. Unfortunately, I don't have these numbers in Fahrenheit for you, ladies and gentlemen, so you'll have to do the conversion, but from what I recall in degrees centigrade, of around about what is 75 to 85 degrees centigrade as a minimum. The wet tyre, meanwhile, its optimum temperature is in the region of around 50 to 60 degrees centigrade, because the wet tyre does have a much greater sensitivity to heat, and the idea essentially you rub down or you burn away the rubber tread block on that tyre. Well, if you get the wet tyre too hot, what ends up happening is you turn it into a slick tyre because you are burning away the tread blocks. But as we do see a few drivers heading on around, not everyone's out there at the moment. I mean, those who've gone out there, they've decided to brave it to see exactly what the circuit's like. Well, I do believe all these drivers at the moment on the slick tyre, you can see that really prominent dry line on the racing line, and there is water on the curbs, but also off of it. So in qualifying, that's not as much of a problem, particularly the water that's off the racing line. The water that's on the curbs and also the runoff areas, that is definitely a big threat, because obviously on a dry circuit, you want to use those runoff areas as much as you can abuse them, and you want to use the curbs as well to try and give yourself the best possible race pace, but also to try and shorten the lap. The only problem is, when we have had a lot of rain, their areas normally where water will congregate. It will puddle up there, and naturally the surfaces out there are not as grippy as the tarmac they're driving on. So 2 plus 2 equals 4 in that situation, and suddenly you find yourself with a surface that's coated in water, and it has very little grip by default, and that's where you do not want to really touch those curves if you can help it. Although your Mega Shane, you can brave some of them as he makes his way through Nürburgring. But more drivers starting to make the way back out into the circuit. Cat Daddy's going to be the first to get a lap in, as he goes very sideways there, curling through the Lycée chicane, and he sets the initial benchmark at a 45.988. Quite a respectable lap, to be fair, although I think there's going to be a bit more pace out there before this qualifying session is done. And remember, they do have the out lap plus 6 flying laps. If they come into the pits midway through their 6 flying laps, the next lap they go onto will count as one of their laps being used up. So they do not get an extra out lap every time they come out the pit lane. They get one of them, and after that, it's go for broke. And I wouldn't be surprised here if a lot of drivers will be putting 6 laps worth of fuel in the car, plus a little bit for the out lap, and they will gradually build themselves up. However, there's a bit of a gambling act to play out here in qualifying qualifying because, understandably, every car that goes out there and does a lap, they will gradually be building up track temperature and they will be displacing water. So in theory, you don't want to be the first driver out there, but somebody's got to go out there to set some qualifying time. Somebody's got to do something. So therefore, that's why you're seeing at the moment Simply Steve, Nicolata and Knotavin. They're all playing the game of sit in the pit lane. Knotavin definitely there. Also, Empty Dust and DC are parked up. Now, in terms of any penalties we have coming into this round as well, in fact, we do have 2 for Empty Dust and DC, and they are qualifying bans, for instance, that occurred at COTA last time out. So you will not be seeing them take part in qualifying. They will be starting from what will be the back of the grid for the purposes of the race. So we rule out 2 of our 11 entrants in this qualifying session, and right now the ones that you do have to keep an eye on are Simply Steve, Nicolata and Knotavin, who are all in the pit lane right now, waiting and itching to go out there, but they don't want to be the fools to go out there until some heat's been put onto the tarmac and they're letting other drivers do it. But the flip side of the coin, of course, is when you do have a 20-minute qualifying session and a lap time here, which is just pushed over 1.5 minutes, well, it's not the longest time in the world, because if you do 6 times 1.5, you do end up with a number which is 9. So in fact, we round it up a little bit further, you're looking at about 10.5 minutes for all those laps to be put together, plus an out lap, which is 2 minutes once you exit the pit lane. So that is going to be around about 12.5 minutes, when in reality, that takes you to approximately what would be 65% of the qualifying session. So you don't have much of a window there, particularly if you make a mistake on any while you're lapsing, you have to recover the car back onto the circuit. You suddenly run out of time. So that's why TonLo wants to get things done nice and early here. Also, I think he wants to get the chip off his shoulder, which is being disqualified from that win. Well, not disqualified for it necessarily, just having it taken from him through pace race stewarding. We don't want to say the wrong word there and give the wrong impression, but indeed the 535 driver looking forward rather than backward, and understandably, what's done is done, and he threw everything at it. He gave us plenty of entertainment, but as he parks up, that looks to be a toe to the pits there, so he wants to tweak something on the car perhaps, but we are seeing those lap times come down quite aggressively. A 40.821. We are definitely on a drying circuit, but again, this could be the driest the circuit is going to be all day if the rain decides to come back. So therefore, there is going to become that natural transitional point where they'll need to get those laps in soon, as otherwise they are going to be at risk of running out of time. But we're still waiting to see Knotavin leave the pit lane. Nicolata and Simply Steve, they're all still in the pits. They are not moving at the moment, as Pancakes, well, he comes towards the end of this lap at the moment. He's on his, his 3rd flying lap, looking quite good. Yet to take a podium this season, but did take a very good performance last time out, and it was none other than a 5th place at COTA, where he was able to just gradually make his way up through the order, and the 481 driver hoping to see the podium sometime soon, but his first top 5 of the season, and he'll be absolutely pleased as punch with that in Texas. Indeed, well, those drivers who's definitely built up pace as the season has gone. This LMP2 machine has not been easy for our drivers to adapt to, but they are gradually getting used to it as he runs a little bit deep there in towards the Lycée hairpin, and now comes for its chicanes. Complete lap and go on to another one, and we jump on board with him for a flying lap. He's making his way down towards the Grande curve at turn number 1. As he does so, normally they'll be on the curve on the right hand side, but he won't be touching that. Touch the apex at turn number 1, through 2, and now into Estrel Bend at turn number 3. Braking nice and late there, letting the car roll deep in tension. That sets up a nice late apex at turn number 3, and now coming all the way down the first long stretch. Through Gulf very shortly at turn number 4, the right-hand kink he's about to go through, and it'll be down towards Adelaide at turn number 5. Of course, the infamous hairpin in Australia, where we did see the contact between Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher that spoiled Damon Hill's chances of a Formula 1 championship in 1996, but it's not going to be any form of contact here for Pancakes. He comes out to turn number 5, but heading out of the corner and now through the kink of 6. First gear, it's all the way back up to 4th gear here by the time he does get to Nürburgring chicane, as he comes on in. Dabbed the brakes, in fact, got to 5th, dropped to 4th again, so quickly changing those gears, runs out a little bit wide, and well, there's not too much water on that curb, so he'll get away with that at 180. Braking about 175 minutes and quarter apex, and you see how late they trail off the brakes. Will come through the kinks of 11 and 12 and getting ready to go towards what will be the Imola chicane. Now here, this chicane a little bit more challenging compared to the Nürburgring because it's unsighted on entry. Indeed, you can't actually see the apex of the right-hander at turn number 12. You've just got to simply wait there, get it positioned up nicely. Now in towards turn number 14 he goes, all the way down to 1st gear. Takes an early apex there. They'll normally go a bit deeper in a dry circuit, but I think Pancake's playing it safe. They're pointing the nose towards the apex to get the car round. Now down the hill he comes, through the chicane left-hander, and in towards the braking zone for the complex to Lycée's hairpin at turn number 15. all the way down, braking from 150 meters away, runs a bit deep there, and you can see very sensitive of the throttle after going to the runoff curbing because there's no grip out there, but gets to the timeline literally next at the corner. A lovely lap from Pancakes, a 40.902. If he had not made that mistake coming through what was the Lycee hairpin, he would be your provisional pole sitter there. Pancakes is finding some really good pace out there. I'm really impressed with that because that was a smooth lap, and to be fair, as TonLo makes his way back out, well, I think they've made some tweaks to the setup at BDS Racing. He'll be hoping now to try and break into the 39s if he can. Well, they've still got some work to do, and you can see that on pit lane next to the fact we've got a bit more spray compared to what is the run through Grander Curve, and that is, of course, natural, given the fact our drivers don't drive in the pit lane normally, or if they do, it's at low speed to make their way out onto the circuit, so that's always a bit of a question mark there in terms of touching what is the water coming out the pit lane. That is always going to take some tyre temperature away. But we do believe our drivers are on the slick tyre out there at the moment, as meanwhile, Nicolator's left the pit lane. He's going on out. So is Knotavin and Simply Steve. So the last of our 3 drivers making the one out. And, well, as we do see the number 23 heading on through, all 3 of them, of course, staying in that pit lane for the first half of the session. They've been letting everybody else simply displace the water. And, well, is that going to work out? We will see and we'll understand, because right now they have cost themselves a bit of time. They've left it as late as possible to go out there, but they'll most likely only get their out lap plus approximately 5 flying laps in, unless they put it absolutely spot on. Knotavin gone onto his first flying lap. There's Night Racing driver. No Jen, unfortunately, today, so back to being a one-man band for the purposes of this round. And, well, of course, we do love to see the teams when they've got both drivers out there, but understanding not everyone can make every round, because the trip to France being quite an extensive one. But as Nicolator sets his first time on the board, well, 40.836 immediately out the box, parks up there, and I think Nicolator deciding to only put literally 1 lap's worth of fuel in and giving it all a go in one go, as he tows back to the pit lane. And as he does so, will Garlic Dog making his way on through the Chateau d'Eau corner, as we just had TonLo there bring a lot of gravel onto the road. Gravel and water does not mix very well on tarmac, I can definitely say that. So Sunny turn 14 is going to feel as though they're going to be driving on marbles for a little bit, but as we do see a bit of a lock up there for Garlic Dog going a bit deep in towards turn 15, well, pushing hard, but you don't want to be pushing that hard. And as he makes his way through, has he got any more laps available to him? Yes, he has. He's got another 3 to go. That was the 46.450, so it was a valid lap, and with that lockup, it just cost him the time he needed. I think if he'd been able to avoid that lockup, he would have matched his previous best, but he's got some more work to do. He does right now make his way out there, and as he does so, we'll keep an eye. Of course, he does have the qualifying ban, so I think this is just purely what is a gauge of the circuit. He will not be permitted to complete this lap. He will have to come back into the pit lane. If he does complete the lap, I suspect there's going to be a big word from the stewards to him after this one. In the very artesian machine, the number 24, as he comes on through there, well, make his way into the chicane. He decides to go on to the rest of the lap, and I think that's just a gauge, and, well, I do believe he'll have to abort it. Yep, he'll pull aside immediately, and, well, he'll abort that lap before it gets underway. So that's the proof there. From Dust, he's just simply going out there to gauge the conditions, but he will not be setting a lap, and I think they have been given permission to do so by the stewards. They have been told, so long as you do not set a qualifying time, you are okay. But of course, if you are out there, you need to be mindful of everybody else out there, and also the fact you do have a ban on the ability to set a qualifying time. But as Knotavin makes his way through, well, he set a very strong initial lap there. That is an absolutely staggering 39.029. And the number 28 driver, were there any question marks about the fact that he was looking to be under so much pressure from the rest of the field coming into this round after TonLo already took him the distance in qualifying and the race? Well, right now those questions have definitely gone away here. Knotavin right now is absolutely dropping the microphone there and simply saying, and, well, that was just a one-off. I'm not going to be that threatened, but will anybody be able to threaten him back? As TonLo, coming towards the end of his third flying lap, what is the 535 driver going to achieve? It's a 40.034. That's a whole second of a Knotavin provisional pole time at the moment. When the circuit is getting quicker and quicker, Garlic Dog now moves to 8 for the 42.034. So he's Sunny found. Where's the best part there of 3 seconds, Garlic Dog. So it just goes to show you certain parts of this circuit right now are looking dry for the most part. Other bits have got a small amount of spray, but these slick tyres are all running on right now. They will be gripping up very well. But there's always one other question mark here when it comes to driving on a drying circuit with a slick tyre and there's still some water around. Are you getting overconfident? And that sounds a bit silly, but hear me out here. And the fact that as the circuit gets quicker, as we do see Cat Daddy setting his final time in the session of 41.267. First time we've not seen him qualify in the second row by looks of things for what is multiple rounds. So therefore, Cat Daddy, after a third place start last time out and one before that, will definitely right now start in 6th today. But to be fair, qualifying is just one part of the day, and there's only one bonus point up for grabs in qualifying. That's a pole position in the race. That's where the majority of the points do lie, with, of course, the wonderful 35 25 points of victory and a bonus point for the fastest lap, which does mean you can take 37 maximum points from a Grand Prix round here. But Simply Steve comes on down. And in towards the left-hander of 180. Well, what we're about to say with regards to overconfidence is the fact, as the circuit gets quicker and quicker, naturally what you start to do is you think you can drive quicker. You can start to use all the road and also the value-added tarmac on the outside of it. But then you start to think to yourself, okay, what if I run a little bit wide? What if I start to use this runoff curve? What if I start to do X, Y, and Z? And then you get the harsh reality, which is all that confidence. You go out into one of these curbs on the exit of a corner, such as coming out of the Circuit de Nevers hairpin. And I do believe Nicolator has found out what exactly happens there. When you do go a bit too wide and the circuit is still wet on the outside, and you'll be going very wide, and suddenly your confidence is knocked down a T. So therefore, this is now the gauge of who's confident, who's overconfident, and who is still a little bit nervous on the circuit, as much as it's going to be outright pace, as Nicolator will go on to what will be his fourth flying lap. You know, just in front, that was Garlic Dog. Well, in fact, that was not Garlic Dog in the trophy. That was Simply Steve, not setting a valid lap there. So Steve goes on to another one as well. He goes on to his full flying lap. He's going to have a bit more work to do as Knotavin comes around. And, well, what's the sector's been like this time around? Sector 1 has not been improved. Sector 2, a personal best of 36.74. And we'll put you in the mindset there. The middle sector for Simply Steve was a 36.75. So everyone is finding time as the timing out breaks himself there in towards turn 14. Goes very deep. And again, that overconfidence there. But now he'll need to try and dial it down as he brings a load of gravel back onto the circuit. Some mistakes being made from the very best out there right now. But meanwhile, as we do look to Etmi Dust, well, remember, no valid lap can be set. So therefore, he is just checking sector times at the moment, and well, he is the quickest of everybody going through the opening sector. Indeed, he's found a lot of time, so expect Etmi Dust to really come through the field if this is a gauge of how quick he's going to be, albeit he just cannot set the time here, so be absolutely gutted the fact he could potentially be a front row starter here today, but the qualifying pen says otherwise. The DC, meanwhile, sits in the pit lane just watching, does not want to use any tyres here, and indeed the Bong Life Motorsport driver just taking it nice and easy in the pit lane. But as they all come on down the round, well, not too long left now in this qualifying session. 4 minutes to go. A few drivers have completed all their laps as TonLo will go on to his final flying lap, and we jump on board with him for a flyer. So the BDS Racing driver heads across that line of 39.167. He has improved recently, but he's now got to find a bit more time. 1.5 tenths off in the Knotavin as he heads through Grande Curve into Estoril Bend. Now down from 5th to 4th to 3rd. Very quickly, does not drop to 2nd. He wants to avoid the rear left tyre from spinning up too much. As Nicolator goes provisional pole, that's a 37.341. And 314 in fact, such a strong time there. It's maybe partially dyslexic for a brief moment. But as TonLo makes his way on down, and down towards what will be turn number 5, looking to go into the brakes there, cut Golf way too much now to correct the car. Well, easing it off there, going through turn number 5, and as he rolls his way off the corner, now it's going to be about seeing if he can make amends there for that small mistake, which has cost him a tenth or two. But still, we're going to stay on board as he gets ready to go in towards the Nürburgring chicane, and he'll be full attack now as much as possible. You see where the curbs have come dry there as well, down from 5th to 4th, and now all the way down to 2nd gear. Very aggressive in those gear changes there. I didn't see the car actually transition into 3rd as he makes his way through 180. Well, not letting the car run too wide there, so he knows there's water on the outside of 180, and he doesn't want to touch it, otherwise the car will be doing what the corner says he'll do. And as he now makes his way in towards the Imola chicane, coming over the rise there, 5th down to 4th, down to 3rd, so quick on that transition, and out in towards the Circuit de Nevers hairpin, all the way down to 1st gear. And the corner that's caught out so many drives so far. Knotavin raised the benchmark to a 36.915. This lap has come alive right at the end. Can TonLo give a response? Boy, it's been a personal best in Sector 1. It's not been improved in Sector 2. Comes down to the Complex de l'IC and makes his way on through. And, well, is he going to peel to the pit lane? He does. TonLo is not happy this qualifying lap. It didn't look a happy lap, to be fair. This is not the TonLo we saw at the Circuit of the Americas. And, well, the 535 driver, 3rd at best here. But will Simply Steve find a way to respond here? Can the speed driver, the speed racing driver, get it all done, or is it going to be just a little bit too far for him? When he comes to the line, he goes visual power to 34.683, right to the end of the sessions where the best times are going to be found, and there's the proof in the pudding as he makes way around to the speed squad car. Got the team name right the 3rd time of asking there, as he makes his way over through Estoril Bend. Well, right now, Nicolator and Knotavin are the only drivers who can really respond. Etmi Dust, of course, cannot respond, but I can tell you one thing, Etmi Dust times right now are up there. If you put his best sectors together that we've seen in practice and also qualifying, he is looking to be just as dangerous, as he did drive off the road there going through turn at number 14 into 15 to make sure he did not set a valid time. But Etmi Dust right now knows he's going to be the match of these guys at the front of the field. But this session, with literally With the bare minimum time remaining here, all these drivers will get their final laps in. Knotavin comes towards the line. As he does so, the night racing driver, the championship leader. Is he going to be taking back provisional pole? He is. It's a 34.674. It's 9 thousandths quicker than Simply Steve. And Simply Steve right now knows with a minute to go, he's got the time to try and improve. Nicolator the same, but they're getting very close to each other here. Steve is now going to be picking up a slipstream off the back of Nicolator's car, which will help him on some of the stretches, but will not help him through these medium speed and low speed corners. And he catches up to Nicolator very quickly. I think Nicolator right now, well, he's on a valid lap, we believe. In fact, Nicolator has got personal best in sectors 1 and 2, so he does not need to abort this lap. Simply Steve right now has got purple in sectors 1 and 2, so he's got to make sure he doesn't get too close to Nicolator here. Could we see these two line up on the front row together? Can they push Knotavin down to third place? As they make the way through the last couple of quarters here, it's first going to be Nicolator, then Steve coming to line. Nicolator goes visual pole, then Simply Steve, and it is going to be a complete turnover of the books as Simply Steve sets a 33.557, a monster lap, and Nicolator 34.674. He equals Knotavins time there, and well, whilst it says that Nicolator's going to be second on this grid, given the fact that Knotavin set it first, surely that's going to mean that it'll be the other way round. Well, that's qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. What an end to the qualifying session. You can tell there's never a dull moment in the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, even in qualifying, and with that we head now into the 5-minute warm-up period. My drivers get a little bit of a comfort break and they get an opportunity to do some brief practice and get the setups on the cars corrected for race conditions. But we do go green flag racing. But my goodness, what an end to the qualifying session there. And well, if we ever needed an advertisement poster for the fact that indeed in the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, never count anything out and never say anything's impossible. Well, right now we've seen that. What a monster qualifying lap in the end. And it was an absolutely incredible pole lap right at the death of the session from none other than this man, Simply Steve, in the number 23, and in the end taking up that pole position by a staggering margin of 1.1 seconds. And we do have confirmation that it will be Nicolator who's going to be starting second. Now, of course, our timing tower said the two of them were equal to the 1,000th, and that is correct. However, on closer inspection to the 10,000th, it is going to go the way of Nicolator, who will be starting on that front row alongside him, I do believe. We are just double checking that with the stewards, but yes, it will be Nicolator who starts in second. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is how close it was in qualifying. Simply Steve, they pushed it a little bit too hard and going through 180 bend, but that's how close it was for second place in qualifying. And TonLo, meanwhile, be starting for the first time in a long time off of the front row. But as he makes his way out there, having a little bit of a snaky moment there through 180. Indeed, they all are, as it's coming over very black over the circuit at the moment, or dark, we should say. Now, don't adjust your TV screen. You don't need to figure out the brightness there. That's on our cameras how dark it's getting, not your TV having brightness difficulties. And right now, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see some more rain sooner rather than later. But this circuit has definitely dried up enough to make sure that slick is the optimum tyre. Indeed, I would not want to be on a wet tyre out there at the moment, because the problem will be that wet tyre will overheat so quickly. It's really going to be a balancing act. And if drivers do decide to start on slick tyres and the rain does arrive, then it's going to be about survival and knowing when it's the right time to transition to the wet tyre, if at all. Of course, it's only a light sprinkling in the rain. You can get away with running the slick. As we mentioned earlier, the idea is if there's not enough water out there, or the rain's coming down but it's not enough and you can drive quickly enough, you can essentially keep the heat in the slick tyre to burn away the risk of aquaplaning on the water. It's when the water gets substantial and you cannot maintain tyre temperature on the slick, that's when you need to go to the wet tyre. There is no intermediate tyre, which is the half and half, where the tread blocks are much thinner by comparison with the wet tyre that you would see in the likes of Formula 1. We only have the wet or the dry tyre. We do not have an intermediate or the in-between tyre, if you will, and therefore it does mean you've got to go one way or the other. It is a real binary choice. As we do see Omega making his way on through there for 3.8 Racing. Lovely livery car, but not quite the qualifying session he wanted, but still, there's plenty of racing to come. We look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to get done. But Biker Pilot making his way on out there in preparation for the Le Very French Grand Prix. As he comes on through, well, right now, your number 42 driver definitely looking to be set. The team for 3.8 Racing, whilst they may not be the driver scoring the biggest of points and getting the headline results, the one thing that's absolutely admirable about this team is the fact that both drivers are making each and every round wherever they can, and it is denoting the fact they don't give up, they don't let the cars be retired wherever possible, and they are scoring those points, and they're gradually moving up the order in the team's championship and chasing down the top 5 come the end of this season. It's crazy to think that after this round, we've only got 3 rounds to go. Indeed, this season has really given us some entertaining races. This has got plenty of narratives with regards to the drivers in the team's championship, and we're definitely going to be seeing another one of those narratives play out here today. But understandably, Well, the way that we have seen qualifying go, and well, when you put it in perspective, Nicolato will be starting in second. Has he picked up a podium in this season? No, he has not. Well, he'll be hoping it could be his first podium of the day. Indeed, today, will it be happening or not? Because meanwhile, Simply Steve, your pole sitter, well, he has picked up 2 podiums this season in rounds 2 and 3, both second place finishes, but never first. He's always been the bridesmaid, but never the bride. And Steve right now in the pit lane there, having the car looked at, and the team making some final setup tweaks. But as Cat Daddy there puts the time on the board, this time will mean nothing. This is more of them just getting some practice in at the moment. Indeed, sun comes back out here, so we're still seeing some of that water gradually being boiled away. And indeed, it will evaporate little by little. But whose aspirations of victory will evaporate away, and whose, meanwhile, will be frozen and set in stone? Well, we're only 40 seconds away from finding out. So if you haven't had a chance yet, ladies and gentlemen, to go to the bathroom quickly if you need to. If you're trying to hold it in, we're going to hold it in for 60 minutes of racing shortly. You don't want to do that. Alternatively, if you need to top up a liquid refreshment, or you want to go get yourself some more popcorn or a snack of your choosing, go do it now. Because very shortly, we're going to be heading to the grid. We'll have about 1.5 minutes on that grid, after which we will be going on that formation lap. And by the end of it, we'll be into 60 minutes of racing here. And round number 7, I get the feeling we've had 6 absolutely entertaining rounds. This one's not going to be an exception, as Daddy makes an exception there of coming through the Nürburgring chicane. But as Epmy Dust rolls his way around, looking very quick as we expected, well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to make a way to the grid, because it's time for the very French Grand Prix in round number 7 of Season 12 of the LMP2 edition of the championship here in the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, brought to you on iRacing. And so as our drivers make the ones to the grid, this is how they'll line up for our one and only race today at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. Simply Steve takes pole position for Speed Squad with a monster pole lap in the changeable conditions of 33.557. He will be joined on that front row 1.1 seconds behind by Nicolator for Nick Squared, who only took that spot on the front row of the grid in second place ahead of Knotavin based on lap countback, and it was to the 10,000th of a second that the Canadian was beaten. So our championship leader starts in third there for night racing in the number 28. TonLo, his main championship rival, starts alongside there. Expect fireworks between those two when they go green flag racing. Indeed, they'll be together there with the BDS Racing driver starting 4th. Then we do see Pancake started 5th for SimCity Racing, matching his previous best result in the race last time out at Kota with 5th place finish. He starts 5th today. Can he take another 5th place? Can he go further inside that top 5? Could he get a podium? We look forward to seeing him try. From the 481 drive, then we Cat Daddy started 6th for playing racing cars, having a bit of a weaker qualifying points, normally starting 3rd on average, but starting 6th today, and he will be joined behind by Biker Pilot for 3.8 Racing in the number 42, and Garlic Dog, his teammate for playing race cars, starts in 8th place there. Then we see Yomega starting 9th for 3.8 Racing ahead of Speed Squad's Empty Dust, had a qualifying ban, so did not set a valid time, and we will see at the very back of the field in 11th place there, Bong Life Motorsports DC will qualifying ban of his own from Kota, and therefore he's now got to bring things up from the very back of the field and try to do a last to podium or last to first challenge. But the formation lap gets underway, ladies and gentlemen. And as our drivers do gradually make the way away, 11 drivers have made the trip to France Day. And that's another thing as well we've seen all the way through this season. Whilst we have not had as big a quantity of drivers as we've seen in previous seasons of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, we have seen plenty of quality racing. And I suspect we're going to see even more of that today as they all try to adapt to this circuit. And again, we have a lot of cloud as I look out my Conte booth window. And the blimp camera here really gives you an idea of how dark it is over the circuit at the moment. But indeed, we could see some rain return at some point. We may see it come heavy, we may see it come light, we may see it come in multiple editions, and therefore our drivers are going to have a fight with each other, both on the road and strategy, and also fight with the weather. But as they all head on down, we jump on board with Cat Daddy, and we take a quick sip of water. Now, Cat Daddy, understandably, for playing race cars, opt in here, try and get as much tyre temperature as you can. All these drivers, we believe, are starting on the slick tyre. We haven't got that data available, so we can't confirm that for you. We're just going to go for it on the basis of how the circuit is going to be feeling. So if we suddenly do have a rain arrive early, we could see a lot of drivers dive to the pit lane immediately, unless the forecast says rain could be coming soon. Then you may see some drivers opt to gamble by starting on the wet tyre, but the nature of that gamble is a high-risk one, because that wet tyre, even on this formation lap, will be burning. It will be coming up to a very high temperature very quickly, and the problem will be if the rain doesn't arrive soon and there's no water on the circuit. As you can see, this picture really shows you. Look to the left, you can see some displaced water there on the very outside edge, or the inside edge of the circuit as they come into Nürburgring, and some on the curb on entry, but there's none on 90% of the road surface at this point, so there's nowhere to cool the wet tyre down where you look for a wet patch to be able to do so. So that's the problem. as Simply Steve leads the field behind the pace car, and well, understandably, that's where everyone will most likely be starting on the slick. Unless the rain was to literally arrive at the end of lap 2, then you could perhaps get away with the wet tyre, but you would have a wet tyre that's going to really be cooled down very quickly. Otherwise, you're going to get a wet tyre that's going to lose most of its tread before you're really able to use it. But as the field comes on around, we look back to Empty Dust and DC, who we've arrived on board, the Canadian driver of Born Life Motorsport, and starting from the very back of the field. But of course, Empty Dust looked very quick in the qualifying session. Even though he wasn't allowed to put a lap together, he was putting in some time trial laps and aborting them at certain points or invalidating them, and he was setting purple sectors in sector 1 in particular, which was his strongest. So the run through Grand Curve to Estoril and down towards the Adelaide hairpin. So he's going to be one to watch out for. And DC Mole didn't do anything in qualifying. He decided to put his feet up and just wait and of course understandably save all his energy for what matters most, which is going green flag racing. Buzzerfield now makes its way back to the final third lap. Well, they're not too far away from going green flag now, ladies and gentlemen, and what a front row we have. For the first time this season, it is not our championship favourites of TonLo and Knotavin locking up the front row. It's instead Simply Steve and Nicolator, two drivers who have both had chance to a podium. Simply Steve has snatched 2 podiums, Nicolator none. But could it be free today for Steve? Could it be his first win? Could Nicolator take a first podium? Will we see TonLo take his first win? Will we see Knotavin make it 7 in a row? Well, for all that and more, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to find out, as it's time to get the very French Grand Prix round number 7 of the championship underway here at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. And it's lights down, away we go there as Simply Steve wastes no time going green as they roar the way down towards turn number 1. Round number 7 gets underway, and as they head in towards Grand Curve, it's a good start there from Steve, and looking very compact, no doubt about it. Further back, Empty Dust already at multiple places. He's gone ahead of Garlic Dog there, who falls behind. Oh, and he goes wrong! He goes right into Grand Curve immediately! Empty Dust goes sideways into the barrier, didn't have enough tyre temperature or brake temperature, and the car completely slid loose on him and went into the barrier, so that's going to be repair work as quick as that. So it's got to roll for Empty Dust. We'll get a replay of that when we can, but as the field makes its way down towards Adelaide for the first time, where we're going to see the 3.8 racing machines, Biker Pilot and Yo Mega queuing up as DC dives up the inside there, under braking! Way too late on the brakes, displaces the cone. What did the cone ever do to him? And DC are running wide there as Yo Mega and Biker Pilot still fight each other. 2 teammates right now getting their elbows out, and it's going to be Yo Mega who gets ahead of Biker Pilot coming into the Australian quarter. But meanwhile, whilst DC may be feeling down under, meanwhile, nobody's been able to get under the skin of Nicolator. He's held on to second, and Knotavin is right behind him right now. The night racing driver there, TonLo, watching from behind, and this is a very different attitude we're seeing today from these two, whereas he goes in towards the inside here of the corner, and Knotavins go to back off. There's no way in at the end for Imola. And as they make the way up the hill down, Knotavin trying to mount that pressure. TonLo, meanwhile, is just watching from behind. But further back, will DC make his way out the inside there. Oh, big gulf of water there coming through Imola. And we'll go to show there's still some water on the inside of that curb. And we'll take an all of it. And of course, water will gradually flow towards the lowest point. Indeed, if the circuit is sloped at all, it will puddle up at the place where the circuit is lowest, where it's gathering. And will DC discourage some water there, but he'll get away with it that time at least. He was going through quick enough on his slick tyres. But meanwhile, oh, it's a spin! It's a spin from Knotavin. My good lord, coming out of Licey chicane. He's gone round. He can't get a car turn. He's got 2 tyre steering lock. He go onto the racing line. He's got to wait for the whole field to come through. And suddenly Knotavins around. He goes to the back of the field. Now Empty Dust is into the pit lane, having to tow to bits after the damage he picked up on the opening lap. I believe he was involved in a secondary incident after the one we saw through turns 1 through to 3. But meanwhile, Knotavin now down to 10th place. He's going to have to turn this into a last to first challenge. Albeit he's still got 58 minutes to go in this race, plus the final lap. So he's got a long way to go. As your Mega B has gone wide, coming through in towards Estoril Bend as well. So this circuit is still biting many a driver out there. And, well, this is a circuit is still dry and we still got the sun out. And, indeed, this circuit is getting nice and toasty. But I wouldn't be surprised here right now if everyone's looking up here and some are doing the rain dance inside the car. They're getting the pit crews to do the rain dances. Others, meanwhile, are getting them to simply disrupt the rain dances down there. But, meanwhile, as Garlic Dodd has DC right behind him. Well, the 199 trials definitely had a smooth start to this one. And Cat Daddy, his teammate for playing race cars, well, he's moved up into 2 places gained on the 69 driver here. Well, this is becoming a recurring theme, which is if he doesn't start on what is the second row, if he doesn't start in 3rd place, indeed he starts away from the podium, but he's always trying to recover. But is it going to be on the 3rd time of asking today that we're going to see him lose out? Let's hold up. Who's going wide? That's Pancakes! Pancakes into the barrier there, going through the chicane and went backwards into the tyres, but looks like the car's okay, or he's just trying to get it off the gravel. He does so in the end. He finds some traction, but that's a mistake that he's not going to be making anytime soon, hopefully, again, as Knotavin meanwhile up into 8th now. This race has been absolutely dramatic, as meanwhile at the very front of the field, And Simply Steve and Nicolator are pulling away. Fastest lap race, Nicolator 35.94 so far, 36.06 for Simply Steve. TonLo a 37.617. The leaders right now, a lap at the best part of 1.5 seconds quicker at least. Well, you could not make this up, but I wonder here whether some cars have been set up for very different conditions, because we are here and there is expected to be a lot of rain coming at some point. In fact, look how dark it's getting. Look up to the sky. One end of the circuit, it is looking absolutely clear skies. The other end, it is looking so grim right now that you'd think that somebody had removed the sun entirely. We're heading towards night time. Well, we're not heading towards night time, I can tell you that, because they've got no circuit lights around here. But meanwhile, DC, he's trying to find a bright idea, which is to move up the inside of Garlic Dog. Too far back, does not go for it, as we jump aboard the dashboard here of your number 3 driver. But the point being, we are really seeing right now this circuit could swing one way or the other, and I think some drivers have opted to put a wet setup on the car for when the rain does come back, presuming it does. But, it goes round, and DC goes very sideways, just taking a bit too much the inside there on the second part of Nürburgring, being so aggressive, and the dirt here would not have helped. It would have upset the rear aero, and suddenly DC's car goes round. He drops down to 9th place. There's Pancake squeeze on through, alongside Biker Pilot and Knotavin. My good lord, this race right now is absolutely full of twists and turns every lap. And well, right now, the leaders definitely not 5D twists and turns here, other than those that are on the actual circuit. Over its course, it's 2.74 mile length. But as we do see Steve and Nicolator rolling the way on through, well, right now, TonLo just a little bit further behind. Is he finding a bit more time? It's a 34.827 for our leader, Simply Steve. Nicolator, meanwhile, in second there, 35.004. TonLo at 35.015. So he has found the time, and therefore perhaps it was a mistake on the previous lap. But what I was trying to say is, of course, some of these drivers will have set these cars up to be good in the dry, but they may have invested so much in it compared to the wet. Now, how do you set up a car for the wet, I hear you ask? Well, you can do some tweaks in electronics, but they will have the ability to do that in the car as they drive. They can turn down the ABS or turn it up, and the same with the traction control. Albeit there's no ABS in these cars, they won't be touching any ABS. They'll just have to modulate the brakes differently with their left foot. However, what's perhaps more prevalent is the fact that if you do want a car to be more stable in wet conditions, you normally put a lot more downforce in the car, so you maximise the rear wing. Now, would you be doing that by default here at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours? Well, there is an argument that this circuit is more medium downforce, because yes, you have quite a few corners, and indeed some very high load corners at high speed bends, such as Esterot turn number 3, where you need quarter speed, but also you do have some long straights, and therefore if you take some of the rear wing off of the car, and also perhaps tweak the gearing slightly and the ride height, well, you are going to end up in a position whereby you want to max out your top end speed and to be able to make overtakes possible. The same on the exit of 180. It's a bit of a contradiction, because you need the quarter speed on exit and the traction, but then you need the speed in the run towards Imola. So therefore, which do you go for? You have to try and find a happy compromise. But for wet conditions, you run more downforce. That way the rear of the car stays more planted on corner exit, and therefore you have less of a risk of the car sliding loose. As meanwhile, Knotavin there makes sure that 5th place slides very comfortably into his hands, as Garlic Dog there not really able to put up a fight. I think he did have a little bit of an oversteer moment coming out of the Imola chicane, and therefore the car very close to the outside of the road coming down into the Chateau d'Eau in order to make sure it was settled down. So Knotavin up to 5th place already after that horrendous moment for him towards the end of the opening laps, and therefore he's on a mission to come through. DC meanwhile on the back here of Pancakes and Biker Pilot as a new fastest lap, a 33.622 for Knotavin. My good lord, the man is flying. That is a whole second quicker than the leaders right now. So Knotavin, well, you take the place away from him, but you can't take the fight out for him. That's a definite. As meanwhile, DC here gets close, but a bit of spray comes up, and meanwhile it's going to go a bit wide there for Pancakes. Does DC get on the inside? He tries to, but it's not enough. Pancakes runs out wide. There was no water initially on the exit curve there. STLC gets away with that, and indeed my heart was going to jump out my chest to that and got around, because I think DC there would have had to have the mother of all reflexes and reactions. But as we do see Biker Pilot under pressure, Pancakes looking up the inside. Is it going to work? The answer is no. And looking back for the rear of the 42 for 3.8 Racing, doing a brilliant job here of withstanding the mental pressure. This is not easy, and keep in mind that on a dry circuit, entirely dry circuit, when you've got 2 drivers behind you, are lapping a bit quicker, normally that's enough mental pressure by itself. Oh, as he takes too much water and it goes round, and the Biker Pilot there were able to get the car to slow in the middle of the road enough. The DC and Pancakes were able to go around the outside of him, and it's going to be a run deep there for Pancakes through 180, and we can see here DC trying to go around the outside. Can he outrun him all the way towards Imola? And trouble. Takes a lot of water out of the way. It sees the car slide loose, but he catches it in the nick of time. It re-grips up, and DC up to 7th place there. Bold, brave, and brilliant, some would say, for the Bold Life Motorsport driver. And right now he's going to be riding that high all the way in the pursuit of Garlic Dog, who's 5 seconds up the road. But my goodness, what a moment there. And well, the good news is, thankfully, Biker Pilot is still running, albeit he's dropped all the way down to 10th place as a result of that spin. But as we do see a new faster pace, a 32.94 now for Knotavin. That's 1.7 seconds quicker than our race leader, Simply Steve. And Nicolator right now is essentially almost 3 seconds slower by comparison. Knotavin going to be with them in due course, albeit he has got a gap to close down. This is not going to be easy. He's got a 17.5 second gap that still awaits him. But at this rate of knots, he'll be with Cat Daddy in approximately what will be about 10 laps, because Cat Daddy is running approximately a second a lap slower by comparison. So Knotavin not having it easy. But then again, now there is a thought process here strategy-wise, but we'll come on to strategy and the importance of it very shortly, because first we want to bring you up to speed with some of the big moments in the opening few laps of this race, ladies and gentlemen, because we've had some big ones. So without further ado, let's take a trip back in time and see how it all started. Now, these replays, of course, courtesy of Arturo Mioga, who provided the brilliant software to enable us to be able to bring you replays in an iRacing and replay file. And here was the race start. Simply Steve having a brilliant start to the race, no doubt about it. But further back, it all went a bit wrong for Empty Dust, who went 3 wide into Grander Curb, or some say you can go 2 wide at best. And when he was able to make those moves, but he found a patch of water into turn number 2, and it just sent the car loose, and suddenly all the way he slid towards the barrier at Estoril on the outside. So it went wrong for the 24 driver after he got it so right at the start. And then we had this for DC only moments later. Now, this was DC making his way down through Gulf and towards the hairpin, but of course, picked up the speed there to beat the 3.8 racing cars, then went all in on the brakes, and then suddenly realised he'd broken about 50 metres too late there coming in towards Adelaide, and had a trip to the gravel, and then gradually rejoined. It also went a bit wrong again for Empty Dust later on the lap, given the fact he'd already lost the rear of the car, as he did rejoin, I do believe, coming out to Estoril Bend, taking some water with him. And unfortunately there at that point, the damage on the rear of the car, plus the loss of traction and tyre temperature, it wasn't going anywhere. But this was the big moment at the end of lap number 1. Knotavin sliding around there as he came out of the complex LIC, and as he made his way through its chicane, the rear of the car completely let go, and then he had to wait, the most painful wait of the ball. He reversed the car off of the racing line and away from it, and he had to wait until the entire field went past before he could get up to speed. We then had this for Pancakes on lap number 2. And this was your number 481 driver here, getting ready to make his way in towards Imola. He did so, but as he did, took way too much apex curb, and with the raising of the car onto 2 wheels plus the water, he actually missed the barrier there, intriguingly. The camera angle not obliging, but the fact he had no recoil of the barrier means that he either briefly tapped it there like a feather, or he didn't tap it at all. So he's got away with that one. He'll be grateful for that. But of course, DC will not be grateful, because he had a bit of a similar incident later on, albeit this was at the Nürburgring chicane, chasing after the plain race cars machine of Garlic Dog, but unfortunately a bit too insistent on taking the apex curve at turn number 8, and the car went loose on him. But if it went wrong for him there, only a lap later or 2, it also went wrong for Biker Pilot. It was under pressure, and that pressure didn't get a bit too much there, as he had Pancakes and DC have to go round the outside of him, but still was able to make sure it did not become a three-way instant, as we did see DC then make that wonderful move on Pancakes, but not without a bit of a brave moment here, as he went through the Kinker 12 and took a lot of water there coming through that left-hander, but was able to keep the car pointed just about. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to your live racing. So as we do, that has been the opening 11 minutes or so of racing. We have still got plenty more to go, no doubt about it. And whilst we've been away, Nicolator has lost second place to TonLo. So that's been a change we haven't quite caught. We do apologise for that, but they have changed place. I suspect that's happened at Adelaide. So at the hairpin at turn number 5, but TonLo now up into second place for the first time today. He started 4th, up into 2nd. Can he go for 1st? Well, as they make the way on for, I don't think he'll be doing his best John Clennon impression, but as they make the way up through the right into left of Imola right now, and Nicolator there definitely wanting that place back as soon as he can. Omega, meanwhile, has had an incident of some description. He's had to tow to the pit lane, so Omega out of this race, at least for the time being. I'm sure we'll see him back very shortly. He'll get towed, and he'll use the fast repair, and he'll get back out there. The Spirit says so. But meanwhile, Cat Daddy back in 4th place. Well, his pace right now, a bit of an interesting area, because he was lapping as good as leaders, if not quicker than them previously, but now that pace has dropped a little bit. But I think we are entering a bit of an interesting strategic phase, and this is what I was going to come on to just before we did go to the replay footage, as we do see Cat Daddy come across line at 33.448. Knotavin a 32.669. So continue to raise the bar of the fastest lap. Knotavin right now definitely here to play and not just to make up the running order, as DC has passed Garlic Dog, who I think has gone deep in towards the hairpin there at turn number 15. We didn't quite see it, but we have seen the place change. So DC now up into 6th. But why are we seeing some rather variable lap times? Why could it be important to strategy? Now, of course, many of you have seen in the dry conditions races we've had this season, of which we have had many, including, of course, last time at the Circuit of the Americas, the fuel tanks that these drivers have in these cars, they are normally good for what is a two-stop strategy, whereby we see the initial pit stop come around 20 to 25 minutes into the race, and we may subsequently see a follow-up pit stop, a quick splash and dash right towards the end. Alternatively, we do see the one stop, and in fact that's been the more prevalent strategy now that I adjust my memory for what has been at these Grand Prix races compared to the Crown Jewel events, whereby we do see the fuel tank go the best part of at least half an hour to 45 minutes. Then we see our drivers come in for a splash and dash to get to the end. But one stop or two stop either way, well, the thing is, with regards to a circuit where the rain is potentially expected to come back at some time, indeed there are highly variable conditions here, is you may actually want to be saving quite a bit of fuel, even if on a one-stop strategy, which we would expect here at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. What ends up happening is the fact that if you've got to pit within 30 to 45 minutes, if you can save the fuel and actually extend the fuel tank an extra 5 minutes, yes, you're going to be losing somewhere in the region of half a second to a second a lap perhaps, but should the rain arrive very late on in the day, you would rather pit when the rain arrives to go to the wet tyre rather than have to pit early, come in, refuel the car, and then come in again when the rain was to arrive, and therefore you'd have to do 2 pit stops instead of 1. So therefore there might be something to be said for some drivers here by backing off every so often, perhaps having a couple of push laps and then having one lap where they completely maximise the fuel saving, so that way they just give the fuel tank a little bit more width. And the one-stop strategy here will be the main strategy, we believe. But of course, it's how long can they take that fuel tank? Now, no-stop strategy, would it be possible? Perhaps, but you'd be driving so far for the pace, you may roll yourself out of the race unless we did see very highly variable conditions straight away, which we have not for the opening 15 minutes. So I don't think we're going to be seeing the no-stop here, but what we will definitely be seeing is a one-stop where a few drivers may try to extend that one-stop even more than what we typically see, really pushing it to the point of what could be a fuel tank that lasts 45 to 50 minutes today in order just to give themselves as much strategic flexibility as possible, because nobody wants to make extra visits to the pits. Now, the good thing about the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours pit lane, it is one of the quickest on our calendar, not in terms of pit lane speed, but in terms of length and how quickly you come in and leave the pit lane. You're not on the limiter for that long, and it is not that long a pit lane either, so therefore it does give our drivers a little bit more breathing room as we see Omega leave the pits. We see that pit lane exit is absolutely bone dry at this point, so it's definitely dried up. Indeed, what is the first half lap seems to be very dry, whereas the second half lap does still have quite a bit of water standing on the circuit. So that's information that our drivers will be aware of, and Omega will be very grateful to know that he's had no difficulty getting out the pit lane, and he'll be feeding that information to his teammate of Biker Pilot. They're saying the pit lane exit is bone dry, and therefore do not worry about sliding loose on pit lane exit. Give it the full hammer and tongs as you make your way on out, as he almost gives it the full hammer there, coming all the way through the kinks of 11 and 12 before Imola. But meanwhile, what's happening on the road right now? We talked about strategy, but what exactly is happening action-wise? Well, Simply Steve leading by 3 seconds, exchanging lap times with TonLo now. Indeed, the two of them pretty much cancelling each other out. Last that, 33.52 for Simply Steve, a 33.53 for TonLo. So only 100 separating the two of them. And Nicolator, meanwhile, a 33.72. So slightly slower, but still within arm's reach. Cat Daddy, there he is, at 33.63. Knotavin just simply says, well, I can see you're all doing 33s. How about a 32.47? So Knotavin still gaining a second a lap. As, hold up a second, that's Garlic Dog off the road, and he's parked up in the gravel there. That's at Adelaide. So Pancakes and DC have passed him there. Will we see Biker Pilot get close soon? Well, Biker Pilot's got a bit of distance to go. He's just making his way down through golf at the moment. But Garlic Dog has got it wrong. He gets himself back on the road now. This is not the way he's wanted it to go whatsoever. So the 199 driver gets himself up to speed, and as he does so, coming in towards the Nürburgring chicane, well, Garlic Dog making an error. We'll take a look back at that error very shortly, but that's definitely something that he's going to need to learn from, as personal best continue to fly in from several drivers. But Cat Daddy has got the presence of Knotavin very much breathing down his neck. As Knotavin crossed that timeline, a 32.363, 1.3 seconds quicker than Cat Daddy at this point. In fact, 1.5 5 seconds quicker there. Let's do that mental mathematics correctly. And right now, your number 28 driver here, he is not hanging around. The only risk, of course, if he is having to really max out the car at this point, is that he will be forced himself to perhaps a bit more of an aggressive one-stop strategy, where he'll be likely probably having to pit sooner rather than later in the race. So therefore, he does put himself at risk of being outsmarted by the weather. But as he comes down up towards the hairpin, a bit of a lock up there from Cat Daddy. That's going to only bring Knotavin closer and closer. And at this point right now, Cat Daddy seems to be struggling as the Playing Race Cars driver gets ready to go into Nürburgring. But I don't think there's going to be a move being made here, as Knotavin staying close for now. And will we look for it into 180? Yes, he is. He's going to go all in on the brakes here, lunges it up the inside, and has so much more confidence under braking. And Knotavin up in a full place. A lovely move there from your championship leader. And well, of course, to be a champion, you're going to have races which really do test you to see how far you can come through from adversity. And right now, Knotavin picking off another driver. He's still got another 3 to go before he gets to lead this race. And well, the change will be the closer he gets towards the front, the higher the pace will be on average. Although if he continues at this pace right now, he'll be with Nicolator within the next 4 laps. So as he comes down the hill, Nicolator right now will be very cognizant of the fact that Sonny, the car behind him, is not the silver grey machine of Playing Race Cars. He's at 69. Indeed, it's going to be a deep blue machine with yellow striping at the night racing number 28 on Knotavin instead. As Knotavin that time at 32.658 to Nicolator's 33.708. So even when he's had to overtake somebody, Knotavin still 1.1 seconds quicker than the man in front of him. Further down the order, Pancakes here does have a little bit of company. However, it is company that is a lap down at this point, but trying to unlap itself most likely. That is Etmi Dust, who after his heroics through turns 1 and 2, which turned into a villainous moment at turn number 3. Well, unfortunately, he could only be a hero for so long, but Etmi Dust is going to try and unlap himself as quickly as he can. He wants to try and get himself back onto the lead lap. He has got the pace, which is actually matching Knotavin. So if it were not for that instant, you've got to imagine where would he be in relation to Knotavin. Well, it's a big what-if question there, but I would suspect we'd see the two of them fighting later on in the race. But that's not going to happen right now, unless we see a complete shake-up of the order. But to be fair, we've still got 2/3 of the race distance and a final lap to go, as Etmi Dust gets the lap back of none other than Pancakes there. So another driver he's got clear of. And well, he'll be hoping now he can chase down Garlic Dog, who is 9 seconds up the road. But definitely Knotavin and Cat Daddy together. And since Knotavin passed him, Cat Daddy's not been dropped as quickly as perhaps we expected. Although it is noticeable there, he did lose 3 attempts going through the chicanes. So it is the chicanes when Knotavin got the greater confidence. So I think right now he's really going with the logic, which is you can't be afraid of the circuit, you just have to go for it. And in doing so, you'll be able to find that lap time, and also you'll be able to keep the tyres warm enough that way the water does not set the car sideways. But through the end of a lap he goes, and Simply Steve a 33.1. TonLo a 32.59. So TonLo's pace now building a little bit. Nicolator a 34.02. So therefore Nicolator right now, well, the Nick Square driver will be seeing very soon. And Knotavin is almost there. And as they make their way through the quarters at the moment, understandably, the risk is getting closer and closer here in terms of a potential move. But Cat Daddy will just watch on for a distance, and then DC is quite a comfortable gap behind at the best part of 23 seconds, and he does have 6.5 seconds to Pancakes there. So looking quite safe and lapping the best part of at least 1.8 seconds quicker that time around to Pancakes. So I don't think DC has to worry at this point. All he needs to worry about is keeping the car on the black stuff rather than see it go to the grass or the gravel. So this race definitely has given us plenty of question points, but of course we still have plenty more questions to go. And at this point, Simply Steve does seem to be in control at the front of the field, even if that control is gradually being worn away a little bit by TonLo getting closer. But we suspect that Simply Steve might be playing the game here, which is sacrifice some time now to give yourself a bit more distance on the opening stint. Don't push the car too hard too early, because you may need the extra laps in order to be able to react to conditions should they change. So that's what we're wondering, whether TonLo is going to give a response at some point, whether TonLo will turn the wick down at any point, or whether right now he's going to try and maintain this pace and essentially take the pace of Knotavin with him wherever he goes. A 32.966 for Simply Steve, a 33.579 for TonLo. So I think Steve reacting there, TonLo backing off a little bit, so they're pushing each other in equal measure, as well as balancing it out. But Nicolaita and Knotavin, they go now onto lap number 15, and the gap between these two has come down as we ride on board here with the man who's giving chase, and we'll wiper is on. That's most likely just to get rid of a little bit of the spray that every so often will come off the back of the diffuser there of Nicolaita's number 5, and also just to get some debris off the windshield. But the fact the wiper is only on intermittently, indeed that the driver's choosing there, goes to show you the fact that there's very little water on this circuit now. We are really starting to get close to racing, and will be a happy circuit as we are. Nicolaita won't be happy with that. He goes very deep under braking, and that's Knotavin now up in a third place. Nicolaita does not go to the gravel trap, and it's going to be a battle briefly coming out of the corner, but in the end, Knotavin's going to get the traction, get the speed, and by the time they get to Nürburgring, it's all done and dusted. So now up into third place for Knotavin, at least on the road for now, but we will see what's to be later when it comes to strategy. As Cat Daddy will be looking at that just behind you. Seeing they go through the bottom of your picture and probably wondering, did it happen as quick as that? And the answer is yes, it did. Nicolaita in the end just breaking a little bit too deep into the hairpin, and Knotavin right now gladly take that one, and he'll be grateful for the fact he didn't really have to fight for it, and therefore now it's a 6-second gap to TonLo that's next up on his list. The rate of knots he's travelling at, he will close that gap down within the next 6 laps. So we'll have to see if there's a reaction from TonLo, or whether they're just going to maintain the pace at the front, whether they do have a reaction, whether they have an answer to the night racing driver, because right now Knotavin is absolutely charging out there. But as he comes towards the end of this lap, we come to the end of a little bit of live racing, and we're going to take a trip back in time, ladies and gentlemen, and take a look at some of the big moments from when we last caught up. And this all begins then with lap number 8, and Omega having it go a bit wrong. I do believe this is a grander curve in towards Estrel Bend. Took way too much apex curve at turn 1. Got it together at turn number 2. He did it again. Oh my good lord, the car almost rolling onto its roof there. In fact, he did come off the ground for a brief moment into the barrier, and it was a toe to bits for Omega. Then we did see, what was this for Garlic Dog? And for Garlic Dog, things did go a little bit wrong as he was trying to chase down Pancakes here for 7th place at the time. Went under braking, went too late on the brakes and took to the escape route, which was to go over the apex curve. Good reactions there from Garlic Dog to do so. That could have been a nightmare moment for the pair of them, but he sacrificed his race for the safety of another driver. So a gentleman driver there, no doubt about it, in the 199. We then did see this move by Knotavin on Cat Daddy. This was coming in towards turn number 9, all the way through 180-degree bend. And as he came out of Nürburgring, when the Garlic Dog left the door open, not expecting Knotavin to dive into that space. So Knotavin said, if you're going to make it that easy, I'm going to oblige you with it, sir. And went all in. So the night racing driver making that one move and then making another on Nicolaita. But this came, of course, with Nicolaita making a bit of an error as he made his way down towards Adelaide, went onto the brakes, and as he did so, the car just slightly twitched now. I think the front left tyre just touching the white line on the outside of the road, or the rear left, actually, I want to say. And in doing so, getting it wrong there, and Nicolaita just losing that place to Knotavin. I don't think he meant to give it up, but then he had to give it up after making a small error. But with that, let's go back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do come on back, well, the clock continues to tick on down, and all these drivers ticking the laps down, no doubt about. But as Simply Steve leads here with 35 minutes still left, TonLo has caught up. That's another half second that TonLo has pulled on him, and, well, rolling the way through the Adelaide hairpin right now. I think we're going to see a battle for the lead soon, because whilst we have seen these two exchange lap times, the natural lap delta has been in the favour of TonLo. I'm not sure if Steve's balancing this race out at the moment, or whether perhaps he's just struggling for a little bit of consistency in the pace. It's very hard to tell as he goes quite deep there, 180. That's an error. That is not by design. He's gone that deep, and you can see that TonLo getting a little bit closer. His game plan is to try and trail break as late as he can into the corner. But when you're running that wide and so close to the white line for so long, you're running out onto a small patch of marbles there and a bit of dirt and gravel that may have been scooped onto the circuit, or wind has blown on. So that does not help you with your grip levels at all. And TonLo is going to happily respond here as they make the way out of the Château hairpin. Albeit went a bit wide onto the exit curve, although these curves on the outside now, they are getting drier. So understandably, our driver definitely thinking he's got a bit more confidence in himself, as we do show you the weather conditions at the moment. And, well, that gives you a gauge. The fact that we do have an ambient temperature of 66 degrees Fahrenheit versus a track temperature of 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So therefore, we are seeing the circuit is warming up now that we have displaced the water and bowled it away. We are not seeing whereas the two are roughly equal, which is what normally happens when you do have a lot of rain and water on the circuit. You'll see those two numbers are practically the same. That's why drivers now are trying to use all the exit runoff space they can from the corners. Simply Steve, they're braving it all the way onto the exit curve of Estrel Bend. It does give them a bit of confidence. And of course, the car not quite getting the traction he wanted necessarily, as we do see TonLo coming onto the brakes here through in towards Adelaide. And the 535 driver from the US of A right now within 4 attempts. And with Knotavin's pace now at 32.59, it was pegged to last time out. In fact, he is still gaining roughly half a second on this pair, lap after lap. He's not gaining as rapidly, and I would say that's because now with the circuit really starting to dry up, everybody's getting confidence. Although Simply Steve right now making another mistake. They're going so deep into 180. He does recover it very well, to be fair to him. The outside line, it is not a strange line to him, but TonLo, you can see, is just able to get to that apex so much more confidently, and that's why this gap is coming down as they both dodge the inside curb water there through into Imola. But TonLo again much closer to it compared to Simply Steve. Steve is driving very conservatively, and it has to be applauded, but TonLo is taking more and more risks, and with those risks he is being rewarded with prizes, which is he can get so close in the braking zones. And coming down in towards the hairpin, gets a bit too close there and being caught out by Simply Steve being much slower coming from the brakes in towards the turning point. And therefore TonLo had to back off, actually had to get off the brakes and push the car to left to make sure he didn't tap the rear Simply Steve. And that's not bad driving from Simply Steve, that's not bad driving from TonLo. That's two drivers with two different levels of pace and confidence, and TonLo just being caught out there. And one of the two things he could have done, he did one of them, which was pull the car to left and get it away from the back of his rival, as there's more rain. What I was going to say, the other thing he could have done is tried to turn it into a late dive at the inside, but as rain starts to fall towards Estoril Bend at turn number 3. Well, it looked quite light rain at the moment, but the clouds are definitely back here. And, that rain that was forecasted is coming back almost at the halfway point of this race. Knotavin is getting closer. Indeed, right now, it seems as though Knotavin at this point will be thinking to himself, okay, we're almost in attacking distance of the top 2, but what do we do now? Well, the next question is, how long is the rain going to fall for, and how severe will it be? If it's only very light rain, it doesn't fall for too long, they can stay out on slicks and they can keep trying to push through. Because we do see it there on the cameras at 180, so therefore the rain is gradually drifting more and more onto the circuit. But if it stays for too long, the one thing these drivers will not be able to do immediately is essentially come onto the racing line anymore. They'll have to start preparing for the fact the exit curves are going to become slippery, and saying the puddles that have been dissipating will be materialising again. But meanwhile, there's contact in towards the Chateau d'Eau hairpin. Simply Steve there and TonLo side by side. TonLo went up the inside and in the end couldn't quite find. I think Steve got a little bit deep. We will get a replay of that, but that contact between the two drivers, they just about survive it as Mel Garlic Dog and Biker Pilot almost a lap down. Well, they've both come into the pit lane, so I suspect they're going to go into wet tyres, and the top 2 come in as well. Knotavin goes another lap. And I think right now, Simply Steve and TonLo have reacted with some damage on their cars as well. They'll use that fast repair, plus they'll put the fuel in to get to the end of the race, unscathed on fuel at least. And, they'll be going to the wet tyres. Meanwhile, Knotavin is going to brave another lap. I think this is actually the right call from Knotavin, because the rain's not coming down too heavily at the moment based on our camera circuit side. So, therefore, he feels as though he can just get one more lap with the tyres in the optimum temperature window. And if he can do that, this is going to gain him so much time when he comes in, presumably at the end of the next lap, to put the wets on, because suddenly he will come out onto a circuit that's definitely got wetter, and therefore those wet tyres will gradually come up to speed very nicely. Simply Steve and TonLo right now, they've got to try and prove the opposite, which is they've put wet tyres on the car, I believe. Well, now they've got to demonstrate the fact it was the right call. But firstly, what they've got to do is they've got to get those tyres warmed up, and then they've got to make sure they don't overheat them. It does sound contradictory as he goes sideways, coming out of Estoril Bend, and Simply Steve loses it there, and TonLo takes the place. He moves up to the second now. Is that the lead of the race and strategy? We will see. Simply Steve now in pieces. Empty dust there. Well, he is a lap down right now on the lead of this race, but indeed he's still on the slick tyre. He has not come into the pits recently, and therefore he's just trying to show the slick can hold on a little bit longer. But Knotavin coming out of turn number 14, still looking very much in control, not setting the fastest sectors, or indeed anywhere near his best sectors at the moment. Understandably, given the fact we've got water coming onto the circuit, and you see that spray starting to become more and more prominent as he heads down in towards the complex J2ICS. But by going this extra lap, he has definitely bought himself a bit more time, and now he decides to make his way in. Is it enough to beat TonLo, who is 42 seconds behind at the moment on wet tyres? He's trying to get to grip up. Oh, look at the car. It's snatching left, it's snatching right. And those wet tyres right now struggling. And Knotavin, meanwhile, well, he's in. He may have similar challenges when he comes out the pit lane. He may not, to be fair, because this rain has definitely come down quite a bit as we get the on-board here. And, our camera's not showing the fact there is fine rain coming down. And, the camera's making it look like there's only rain in certain sections, but there's a lot more rain than that. And TonLo right now into battle with the car and battle with the circuit every step of the way. It ain't wrong for Simply Steve, but TonLo right now, it's going a bit more right. But how exactly will he be able to find a way back ahead of Knotavin here, as Knotavin already leaving leaving the pit lane. So Knotavin is going to be your race leader here. He's got it done, going the extra lap on the slicks. He has been making the difference. And well, that difference right now is going to be to the region around about, I suspect that's a 10-second swing there, as TonLo crosses the timing line, and the gap is 10 seconds as he comes through turns 1, 2 and in towards 3. So TonLo right now dropping down these. So you're wondering how on earth Knotavin has done it. And well, the simple answer is Knotavin went one more lap on the slicks. It was the right call to make. The slick tyre still had some pace in it, and now that he's onto the wet tyre at this point, it will now be about getting those wet tyres adjusted and then just settling in for a circuit that has evolved in the direction of being much slipperier compared to how it was at the very start. Indeed, we are back to a circuit now akin to how it was in the practice session in the build-up to today. But Steve, after recovering in third with Nicolator behind, and you can see Cat Daddy right there with him. So there has been a change between these two, and we'll get a replay of the battle between these two, because Nicolator was, of course, very happily running with Cat Daddy quite far away, but Cat Daddy is caught up, tried to make the move and then lost out. But Nicolator in the number 5 trying to keep the plain race cars machine behind, and the square team will definitely be grateful for the point if he's able to hold on just that little bit longer. Of course, his teammates of Trollman not here today, so therefore Nicolator representing the team solely but proudly. But you can see Cat Daddy there looking a bit more confident coming through 180. Went a bit deep, but to be fair, Cat Daddy really trying to suss out where the grip levels are, where the water is, and again the racing line now becomes less and less a racing line that you want to use. You can see the black patch of tarmac there compared to the greyer bits. That is the drier line, what you could say, which would be previously the racing line. And well, Cat Daddy really quick there going through the Imola chicane. And Nicolator struggling for a little bit of grip on exit of the J2ICS hairpin. But understand it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass, and Cat Daddy will definitely want to try and make that move happen sooner rather than later. But goodness me, what a period it's been. Everyone has come into the pits, everyone has gone onto the wet tyre now, and some are coming sooner than others. But everyone has made that strategic call, and as Cat Daddy gives pursuit, will we get a replay of some of the big moments of that transition, including, of course, the battle between TonLo and Simply Steve before the rain arrived, and here it is. So this was in the run coming up through the Imola chicane. Now, Simply Steve came out of the corner. He was not quick through there. TonLo dived to the inside. Steve turned in. TonLo was on the inside. Well, I get the feeling that's going to be a 6 of one, half a dozen the other, that incident, because of the fact I think TonLo had made it to the apex quite comfortably. He was there, and Steve had turned in. I don't think he'd realised that TonLo coming as aggressively he had, and in the end, I think both drivers will talk about that one afterwards. I think it was a bit of a misunderstanding rather than any malice meant. But of course, as they both came into the pit lane, and Simply Steve made sure to be leading into the pits, well, Knotavin went another lap, and it was the right call. But after they all left the pit lane, we had this for Simply Steve. He'd left the pits, he was back into the effective strategic lead as he tried to get the power down the exit of Estoril Bend. Well, those wet tyres were not warm enough to grip up, and suddenly it went very sideways onto the gravel there as TonLo was a little bit more tentative with the throttle, and it worked out for him in favour. But Simply Steve lost out. What about Cat Daddy versus Nicolator? This happening a little bit afterwards, and well, Cat Daddy side by side with Nicolator coming down the hill towards what was the complex till IC, and well, Nicolator had got ahead. Cat Daddy tried to outbrake him and outbroke himself in the end, and went a bit too wide at the turn 15 hairpin, and Nicolator was able to retake the place there. So the battle's all up and down inside the top 5, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to your live racing once again. And as we do, well, the rain is definitely continuing to fall here. There's no doubt about it. Wet tyres are probably going to be the key now all the way to the end. And it's taken the best part of what has been an hour of tarmac action to be able to displace the water and get the circuit to dry up. But look at the curving there going in towards Grande Curve. That tells you everything you need to know, which is this circuit is fully on wet now. And this is going to be a race about survival and conquering the conditions all the way to the final checker flag. But Knotavin, after falling all the way to the back of the field and going from last back to first through strategy and just natural race pace, well, now he's got to be able to try and keep it together all the way to the very end. As TonLo there, much more aggressive on the brakes, but in doing so, well, runs a bit too deep going through Adelaide Bend. He's trying to find a better race line. As he heads up towards the Nürburgring chicane, that's the thing now for these drivers. They need to experiment. They have got to relearn the circuit, and it does sound a bit odd when they've been doing so much practice at this circuit in the week building up to this race, plus also on a race day. They've had that practice session, qualifying, the warm-up, you name it, they've had it. But the thing is, every time the rain comes down, the circuit changes just that little bit more. Every time you race at a circuit, it is slightly different. You've got different levels of rubber, different levels of grip, you've got different wind speeds, conditions, and the conditions they are already going to make or break the race for so many drivers, as we do see Simply Steve there for the Speed Squad. Right now, currently in third, is he matching the pace of TonLo just about. So it may not be over for them in the battle for second. It may not be over in the battle for the win, to be fair, because Knotavins last lap by comparison with TonLo's wasn't the strongest. But of course, we will now find out on the next one, because they do need a couple of laps to really get those wet tyres settled and conditioned in. And what will it be for Knotavin this time around then? As he goes a little bit deep there coming into the chicane, but just about avoids picking up a black flag for track limit, a 47.889. TonLo, meanwhile, a 46.717. This may not be over yet. Simply Steve, a 46.548. If TonLo and Simply Steve can keep up this pace and Knotavin does not improve, something tells me we're going to have a three-way fight for the win on our hands. Look at that wet line, though, coming down in towards Estoril Bend. Right now, that shows you how wet the circuit's getting. The spray level is absolutely huge, but TonLo able to run the exit curve there just about. So he's risking it right now, but he wants that lead. He wants to break the hand and the hold that Knotavin has over victories. He does not want to see it become 7 wins since the start of the season, all going to one driver. And that's why he's going deep into Adelaide. He gets better traction on that deeper line by comparison. He loses time initially on entry, naturally, because he's making the corner and the braking zone much longer. But on X, he's able to get the power down. He carries so much speed here into Nürburgring. But of course, now he's got to bleed off that speed as best he can. When he does so, he is closing on Knotavin quite quickly. Cat Daddy and Nicolator, the battle between these two is now starting to go away in the favour of Nicolator. There you can see him in the foreground of the camera shot as Cat Daddy there cuts a bit too much of the corner for the second part of the Nürburgring, so he will be required to give that time back. And we're going all the way through 180 at the moment. You can see Nicolator right now. Again, not as aggressive as Cat Daddy. It's so intriguing how we do have these differences in behaviours of drivers. We saw it for Simply Steve and we're seeing it for Nicolator. Both drivers are not as confident as in attacking the circuit in the wet, but they are very consistent in how they approach driving the circuit. Meanwhile, Cat Daddy, he is very confident in his abilities. His consistency is perhaps not as strong because he's constantly pushing, but because he's pushing so hard, he is closing Nicolator down little by little. And therefore, when these two get closer together again in the fight for fourth place, which does seem to be the place that Cat Daddy is really making his home at the moment, less so the podium, well, he attacks into the, let's say, hairpin, and by going that deep, he is going to go off the circuit. Of course, he's got some instant points to play with, but not too many. And of course, if he does have a spin at any point, well, that becomes a 2 instant point count, because that is considered to be a loss of control. A reminder, in terms of instant points, it's 1 for an off-track, 2 for a loss of control, and 4 for a car contact. And if you do have what is a minor tap contact with another driver, it's a 0x normally, no instant points, it is just a rub. Indeed, semi-contact is allowed in motorsport, as we do see a bit of run wire there from Cat Daddy, unless it's exhibitionism racing, whereby it's normally classic cars which are not allowed to battle each other. They only overtake by invite, but we're not having that here today. But if we do see a tiny tap like that, and it does result in a driver going off the road, it's very quickly upgraded to a 4x. But meanwhile, things going a bit wrong for Omega recently, now 5 laps down. He has been involved in a couple of incidents and a trip to the pit lane quite recently. We're not going to get a replay of that at the moment, at least, but he's still out there in 11th place, bringing up the rear of the field, and, well, 4 laps behind Etmi Dust. And Etmi Dust, after what was some absolutely staggering pace demonstrated at the start of the race, albeit just a little bit too early in terms of trying to pull the trigger on that pace, Estoril Bend on the open lap. Well, right now, he's trying to chase down Biker Pilot, who's 15 seconds up the road. But behind him, well, that is going to the machine of DC, currently in 6th place, and not quite able to hold a candle to the pace of Etmi Dust previously. But right now, he is getting closer and closer in terms of pace. So these two are definitely right now going to be on a convergence course sometime soon. But as we do leave them to their own devices, Nicolator and Cat Daddy still there. As we look back from the rear of the number 5 driver, Cat Daddy getting closer and closer here. The playing race cars driver wants that 4th place back, and indeed playing race cars at the moment with Cat Daddy in 5th and Garlic Dog in 8th. Well, if we do see Cat Daddy move up to 4th place, they will be challenging for the top of the Team's Championship soon. If not in this round, it will definitely be next time out at Sebring. But as they hop, skip and make their way towards lap number 26, you can see there, Cat Daddy so aggressive on entry into the Lycée hairpin. And on that inside line, when there's a lot more water, he's actually finding that the wet tyre has greater grip on entry to the corner. But of course, the problem is he has less speed on exit, and he has to try and create a much wider line into the chicane very quickly. Nicolator, meanwhile, just sticking to his normal lines. You can see the reflection of the road surface down the inside of Estoril. There's so much water gathering on the inside of the exit now that the wide line is the line to be on. You do not want to be on the inside line because it will cause the car to understeer straight off the circuit. But Cat Daddy are still within 6/10. So you can see the headlights getting through the spray. But Nicolator parks the car in the middle of the road there, just taking it nice and easy. Teasing the throttle back on. And Nicolator right now looking to be a little bit more confident now. I think he's finding his lines in. Has really had to wait until the circuit has got to its full wetness where he's able to start to match the pace of Cat Daddy even to a degree. Meanwhile at the front, Knotavin, he is now starting to get one back on the pace of TonLo and Simply Stevie's matching them. And I think all three drivers now experimenting with racing lines and with time. As that was a very sideways segue there through Imola for Knotavin between turns 11 and 12. Not the way he wants it to go whatsoever. In fact, 12 and 13, I should say. And coming through 14 right now on number 28 driver here. I think still battling with the circuit a little bit. Now, the fastest lap of the race, it was set by Knotavin much earlier on. It was a 32.016. Something tells me that lap 16 fastest lap is not going anywhere away anytime soon. Given how wet the circuit is, I do not think we'll be going back to an almost dry circuit ever again today, unless somebody puts the world's biggest hairdryer on the circuit. But either aside, and sarcasm depreciating, well, right now, your number 28 driver here, he will not be joking around in that car as he tries to push on. Knotavin that time around at 48.15, TonLo at 48.28. Oh, and he goes sideways in towards Esther, and Simply Steve comes back on through. The corner that caught out Simply Steve on pit exit was on it, catch out TonLo in full base, and TonLo, we were about to say, was losing ground to Simply Steve, given the fact that Simply Steve had taken 7/10 out on the previous lap. So now Simply Steve takes up the chalice, or the, what is the poisoned, or is it the positive chalice? I leave that up to you guys and girls tuning at home, because TonLo in the end falling out to second place. Now Simply Steve holds on to second, but is this a second place that is going to be a bridge too far? Well, we'll have to wait and find out, because right now he's got to try and get the job done here as he makes round around. Indeed, TonLo's going to try and get himself back together, and you see in the rear of the picture, that is not Nicolator, or is it? No, that was Nicolator going very sideways there, as they do have then Garlic Dog coming up a lap down in 8th place, but that was a very sideways Nicolator coming out of what was turn number 9 in towards 10, 11, and as he makes way through, in fact coming out to turn number 5, I should say, in towards 6 and 7. As I'm getting my corners mixed up there, given the cameras. And as he rolls his way through 180, well, right now, Nicolator just taking it nice and easy, but he has brought that gap to Cat Daddy up to 2.1 seconds now. So Nicolator definitely looking very good here as the circuit has got to its full wetness compared to Cat Daddy. I think all his confidence. The problem is he's not been able to suss out exactly where the ideal wet line is, and I think that's where we've seen the playing race cars try to fall back little by little. But he'll try and see what Nicolator's doing, and he'll try to learn from him. That's a good thing. When you've got a driver in front who's quite a distance away, you're not really seeing too much of the spray, or it's not obscuring your vision. If anything, what you do get is a spray up the road, as you'll see it there. And in fact, we'll get the onboard to show you what that looks like. In fact, this is the camera coming down over the nose of the car, and you'll just see a patch of spray in front of him, but he can follow that. That will be his guide, if you will, his shining star on the road. And the playing race car just runs a little bit deep there through 15 again. And, well, find himself on that exit curve, and it does not help him at all. Nicolator that time around a 50.201, Cat Daddy a 51.567. So therefore, a 561, I should say. It's Cat Daddy who is losing the time. But getting ready to make his way towards Estoril this time. He won't want to push it too hard, because the more he pushes it there, the more it's likely to go sideways, as it did for TonLo only moments ago. Speaking of which, we get a replay of what happened to TonLo, and here we go, ladies and gentlemen, a trip back in time. So this was TonLo in second place at the moment of the replay, as he came down in towards the braking zone for Estoril. The rear of the car just letting go there, so it snatched around on itself, and I wouldn't be surprised there if there's a bit of a patch or a puddle of water coming down to Estoril Bend, or a stream of water, and the car getting caught on it, and the rear tyres just simply saying there's no traction here, we are going on around. So an innocent mistake, an easy one to make, but a costly one at that. And we also did have this happen to Omega after he'd left the pit lane. And Omega making his way in towards the Lycée chicane as he mounted the curves there. Turn 16 was fine, turn 17 was fine, but a bit too eager on the throttle there. And in fact, I think it might be a bit of an erroneous capture of the fact that he's been involved in an instant, ladies and gentlemen, because there does not seem to be an instant. I think it was the speed he carried through the corners. So a bit of a glitch with regards to our timer, but you still see that Omega keeping it together. And with that, we now make our way back to your live racing. And as we do, we are into the final quarter of this race, and with the time that's remaining, well, we still do need to see, will Knotavin be able to keep Simply Steve behind him? The gap 4.7 seconds there. You can see Steve in the rear of the picture. But the Night Racing driver right now, seemingly having enough of a gap here to feel confident. Steve is pushing fast. Simply Steve is absolutely giving it his all after the circuit did claim him a little bit after he'd left the pit lane. Next year, Esteril Ben, seen him go to the gravel when he put those fresh, wet tyres on. But right now, he is definitely on a mission to close that gap. But the problem he has is he's got to lap quicker and quicker here. Naturally, Knotavin with a almost 5-second gap will feel relatively safe. And Simply Steve has got to put in the effort to bring it down. How many laps are remaining, I hear you ask? Well, given their current pace, we are looking at approximately what will be around about 7 laps left, including the one they are on. That's not 100% perfect, so don't take my words for gospel, ladies and gentlemen. That's the approximate number of laps left. Of course, if we do see the pace of the racing fall even further, should this circuit really turn up to be a monsoon circuit, albeit normally that'd be red flag conditions, but we don't quite have that on iRacing in terms of red flags for wet weather, where you could imagine the lap times will be pushing towards 2 minutes, but right now we are lapping consistently towards the 1-minute 49s to 1-minute 50s, 1-minute 48 if your name's Simply Steve or TonLo, and therefore that's the way the pace is going. Should the circuit speed up, we could be seeing the lap times go down towards 1-minute 45s to 1-minute 42s, although given the amount of water on the circuit right now, I don't think that is going to happen. As TonLo coming very quickly there through the middle sector. Still rain falling out there. It's not always caught on our cameras, to be fair. Indeed, some of the rain being very fine. When it's that drizzly rain, well, that's some of the worst of it, because it does look deceptively light, and then suddenly you find out the puddles are congregating. As TonLo, they're having to dodge a massive puddle going to chicane bend as he makes his way through the Lycee hairpin this time. A 48.8 for Knotavin, a 49.0 for Simply Steve, and for TonLo, a 47.5. So there is pace out there. There are 47s available for those willing to find them. Simply Steve's not been able to find it that time around, and TonLo has, so it continues to swing back and forth. Nicolator and Cat Daddy, these two as well, exchanging lap times if it's going out of style. Nicolator that time 50.3, Cat Daddy a 49.4, so he brings that gap down by almost a whole second again. So can the Plain Race Cars driver find his way to 4th? Can he take that place back again? Or will he find himself relegated to 5th this time? As DC, meanwhile, 20 seconds behind here. Well, he's very safe. He has Pancakes 35 seconds behind him. So I think 6th place is definitely going the way of the Bong Life Motorsport driver. As meanwhile, the 481 car carries on. But understandably, for Pancakes, this is now all going to be about simply keeping it nice and smart for SimCity Racing and bringing home some valuable points. Won't quite be a top 5 today unless he does see Misery hit a couple of the drivers in front of him. But to be fair, 7th place in these conditions, it's worth plenty of points. But as Dust chases after Barker Pilot, a lap down, well, these two getting ready to do battle, but not if Dust goes out that wide. Just about keeps it together. My good lord, he is really tempting fate, is the Nordic driver, as he comes on down towards turn number 5. Well, right now, a very colourful car there, and he's having a very colourful interpretation of the wet weather line, and in fact, taking a bit of curb there going in towards Adelaide. He is braving it and then some, as we do see a Biker Pilot there deciding to use all the exit curb as well. They are both behind Garlic Dog, who's had a couple of trips off the road recently, so we could yet have a freeway battle for 8th place. It's a lap down, but to be fair, when they don't have the leaders anywhere near them at the moment, they're going to enjoy this, and well, we're going to enjoy seeing it happen as Garlic Dog goes deep. He runs way too deep into 180. He takes an off track there. That will be an instant point, but it helps and gets a good exit line, so therefore I think in the end he'll be grateful it's worked out, but he's also being mindful of the fact he can't keep doing that through fear of picking up more and more instant points. Right now, Garlic Dog under pressure, and Sunny Plain Race Cars may not be getting what will be that 8th place anymore. They could be at the risk of losing some points as Biker Pilot goes straight on there. Imola, he's going to lose out there to Dust, and Dust does get released. So a small mistake from Biker Pilot, but an easy one to make, and therefore falling on down. Meanwhile, TonLo's had a big instant of some description, or big off track, I'm hearing in my ear, because Sunny drops the best part of 8 seconds behind Simply Steve. But saying that, I think Simply Steve's had a bit of a moan of his own coming through what was the run of Esteril Bend. We'll be going very sideways, but not off the track, so we may not be able to get a replay of that, but we will be able to find out what happened to TonLo very shortly as he gets it back on the road. But before we do that, Dust still on the attack as we ride aboard the dashboard. My good lord, look at the spray, and this is as close as you're going to see it from a driver's eye view as he makes way in towards turns 1 and 2. Run wide there from Garlic Dog, and Garlic Dog onto the gravel. There he goes straight on, almost running off the road. There is Biker Pilot, but the Plain Race Cars drive falls close to final hurdle. He drops down to 10th place, and Dust up to 8th, Biker Pilot up to 9th, but is it over yet? Let Me Dust, in theory, will be breaking away, given the pace he's been demonstrating. And Joe Omega is into the pit lane once again. That's going to potentially put him down now to 6 laps down off of the leaders. But Joe Omega still trying to hold on. And so long as he gets to the end of the race and he finishes within what is half of the race distance of the race winner, he will be awarded the full points there. So Joe Omega making a quick trip to the pit lane. And in fact, I believe it may have been a drive-through penalty for him for instant points there for Joe Omega. In fact, he makes his way back out. There's the proof in the pudding that he's still on the road, but definitely a long way away now from the top 10 here. And at this point, it's all about survival. But as our leader makes his way on to lap number 32, there is Knotavin. Gap now up to 5.6 seconds. Gains another 1.3 seconds over Simply Steve. I wouldn't be surprised at this point if Simply Steve is just simply saying to himself, you know what, take the second place, make it 3 second place finishes this season. Indeed, every time he's been on the podium, it has been second place. One day the win's going to come, but would you risk it right now, given how challenging these conditions are and the fact that every time he tries to push, he's going sideways at some point, and alternatively, the rival of TonLo, well, TonLo right now has had some big moments as well. Speaking of which, we take a look back at exactly what happened to TonLo only moments ago, as the pursuit of Simply Steve hit a bit of a road bump. But here we go back in time, ladies and gentlemen, and here is the replay. And as he made his way on down towards turn 1, the speed bump in came at Grande Curve. But what was it exactly? Well, made his way into the corner and just went straight on the car understeering. I suspect he's hit a wall of water on the inside of turn 1. There's quite a puddle building up there, and we've seen it catch out several drives in the dry circuit earlier on, and that's why TonLo did get it wrong. And for Simply Steve, he was able just to carry on there and not risk it too much. Meanwhile, we did have this for Cat Daddy. This is where it went a little bit wrong for him going in towards turn number 1. Although I think he got away with this for the most part. As he made his way through the left-hander, went wide to the apex, and then just briefly took a trip to the gravel and quickly brought it on before he got to Esther or Ben there. So good reflexes there to correct that. Meanwhile, it went wrong for Garlic Dog, his teammate at the same corner. This was Garlic Dog under pressure at the time from Let Me Dust, who was trying to take that 8th place off of him, and in the end went in with too much speed, went out wide, and at that point he had to straight line the car and decided better than fighting the car onto grass and in tarmac, where it's 3 different levels of grip he's going through, instead just simply drive it straight on midway through Estoril, where the circuit's going to be clear, and you can use the runoff area there to grip the car up initially before going back onto the grippier tarmac. So good reactions from him. Loss of the place, however, and back to live racing we come. But as we do, well, we come back to what is TonLo there, still trying to find a way to bring down the gap to Simply Steve. But I think at this point right now, the place is maybe settled unless anybody makes an absolute catastrophic error of all proportions. Knotavin being no exception right now. Indeed, he cannot rest on his laurels at this point. And, well, the man who had all that pressure at the Circuit of the Americas today, he put all the pressure on himself straight away. That error on lap number 1, but he made his way back through the field. And after gambling with going that extra lap on the slick tyres, well, it's definitely played out the right way, because by going to the wet tyre later, he was able to really get comfortable on it immediately on his out lap rather than needing several laps, which was the problem for Simply Steve and TonLo. They went to the wet tyre just 1 lap too soon. They didn't brave the wet conditions more than perhaps they needed to, and therefore the number 23 driver had that sideways moment. TonLo subsequently had a couple of errors of his own, and that's how there was a massive 10-second swing in the favour of Knotavin, who was able just to get that 1 extra dry lap out of the car before he was definitely forced to go onto the wet tyre. And, well, you would think that right now we'd had a wet weather race all day, given how wet the circuit is, but no, we had what was a drying circuit and sunny rain arrived. But meanwhile, arriving on screen, that's a mistake there from DC. Brings himself back onto the road. That's happened at the Adelaide hairpin there. He's gone very wide, and indeed, he's been hung up high and dry on the gravel. But now he's back onto the road, at least for now. But that is not the way you want it to go whatsoever. So DC holds 6th, but the gap to Cat Daddy has now tripled all the way up to 11 seconds. As we do see Cat Daddy making his way onwards through the kinks of 11 and 12 and getting ready for the chicane of Imola. As he does so, well, the number 69 driver right now definitely losing the time there to Nicolator, who's opened up the gap. And in fact, I think there was a big off for Cat Daddy that we have not seen. So therefore, that explains why Nicolator is so comfortably clear at the moment. But offs are still happening for drivers. And meanwhile, we look back to TonLo, still chasing after Simply Steve. Gap now at 2.6 seconds and closing. There is Simply Steve. You've seen the distant camera view. And as they make their way down through Gulf Race shortly towards Adelaide, well, Simply Steve definitely right now living by the premise, which is I don't need to be the quickest out there to finish second. I just need to be consistent. And that consistency very valuable. In fact, you can see it under braking there. Very safe under braking. TonLo, meanwhile, brakes in the middle of the road and then suddenly brings the car to the outside to open up the hairpin at the last possible moment. He's driving right now with what is an absolute fire in his heart, which is to say I can get that second place back. Simply Steve is taking the approach, which is don't make any mistakes and you hold on to the second place. So there's going to be quite a bit of interest here as TonLo gets it a bit wrong, cuts too much the apex there going through Nürburgring at turn number 8. So I think he's going to give that time back at some point. And, well, I suspect that black flag will only be half a second or so. But TonLo is pushing still. He's not giving up on the second place. He wants it! Oh, goodness me, almost loses it there. And I think he's pushing himself right now. He could be pushing himself towards destruction at this rate. But still, the 535 right is either going to be 100% or 0%. There is no in-between for this man. Indeed, he only has an on and off state. He does not have somewhere in the middle. He has no quantum state to him. And to be fair, we love him for it as he makes his way through turn 14 at the moment. But still, after this lap, as Knotavin makes his way through, we've got 2 more to go. We will get 36 laps here at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours in round number 7 of the championship. And Knotavin right now finds a little bit of traffic in front of him. That's going to be Omega, who he laps to now put 6 laps down. But he is very comfortably clear of Simply Steve, who has TonLo closing at 49.176 for Simply Steve that time around. TonLo at 48.4. This battle for the runner-up spot, it could go down to last lap at this rate of progress. But TonLo right now, for all the speed he's carrying, is he carrying too much or is he carrying the right amount? And that's the risk he is running. The risk versus reward nature of his driving at the moment as he takes a whole second out of Simply Steve coming through Estoril Bend there. Well, TonLo's confidence is absolutely staggering to behold as we do see the Omega stepping aside that gets the car completely off racing line to make sure he does not impede this battle for the top 3 spots, and he'll be grateful for it. And TonLo in particular, as he breaks his way in towards Adelaide, and again that centre to outside line he's taking, he's really making the brake pedal plus also his left hand side tyres work hard there, but he's got the life in them. And it's working. He just gained 3 temps through Adelaide alone. So 1.2 seconds is the gap now. And going through Nürburgring, they're just about keeping it within track limits, but runs out so wide and on that exit curve, it's gaining him time. But it's been a risky touch of the white line. He goes onto the white line. He just gets it together. And TonLo right now fighting with a car. And those white painted lines, they're not just there for decoration and to show you where the track limits are. They are also the most dangerous parts of the circuit. Such innocent little lines. But in the end, when they're only at centimetres and millimetres wide, TonLo right now 9. Every time you go out, then there's less grip there, but he needs to go out as wide as he possibly can to get the lap time. So the gap's now down to 9 tenths here as he makes his way into the Chateau hairpin. But as he comes through that right hander, again running it as wide as humanly possible. On the absolute limit as our race leaders already at the Complex de l'IC. Knotavin gets ready to go on to one final tour of the circuit with 1.5 minutes to go or so. And, well, we are coming up to the final lap, but TonLo right now going as deep as he can into the hairpin here at 15. Looking to try and set up a move here going on to the final lap, and we're on his way right into left. And Simply Steve at this point is going to think to himself, how on earth did he get that close so quickly? Well, the answer is simple. TonLo right now is risking everything for this second place. And meanwhile, Simply Steve just driving it smart and safe, but coming through Grande Curve Bend, now in towards Estoril, where we look back from the rear of Simply Steve's car. We are on the final lap, ladies and gentlemen. Your leader is 7 seconds up the road in the form of Knotavin, but we are staying with this battle for second all the way as far as we can to the finish line. As right now, on to the run of golf they go. TonLo within 2 attempts here and closing little by little. They power all the way on down here, and TonLo right now looking to the outside. Simply Steve puts the car in the middle of the road here, defending, knowing what TonLo's going to go for, but TonLo goes all in as he does. Brakes at the inside. Simply Steve goes on the switch back here. They rub paint, but to be fair, it's fair racing between these two. Side by side going up towards Nürburgring now. And here comes TonLo, but he backs off. They switches to the inside, and Simply Steve holds the line. They know there's only one way into the corner here, and TonLo has to cut off race line to be able to see the corner. He's got so much spray in his face, and Steve right now has that advantage as well, which is he can simply blind the guy behind. But TonLo sees a move up the inside. He's going to go for it. 2-1. They go in towards 180. 2-1 the exit as well. They touch. TonLo goes a little bit sideways, and Simply Steve simply holds his line as he drifts sideways. They're going for the kink of 11. TonLo throwing everything at this, including the kitchen sink, but it's not working at the moment. Simply Steve is just too cool as a cucumber for him, and right now it's blazing hot actions there from TonLo as he almost goes a bit off the road at Imola, but he keeps it together for now. And looking around the outside at Complex 2, well, not Complex de l'IC, coming through Chateau. He's going to go for the switch back again. And Simply Steve goes a bit deep, but he will get the traction. But meanwhile, as they make the way down the hill, we have to leave them, ladies and gentlemen, because for this man, well, it all went wrong at the end of lap number 1. It went around, but in the last, the first challenge, he's ticked it off in the wet weather conditions. Nobody could stop him. Knotavin makes it 7 wins this season. The night racing driver proves indomitable. But who finishes second? Simply Steve will hold on the end to take his third second place finish of the season for Speed Squad, just ahead of TonLo for BDS Racing, who in the end has to sell for third state in a heroic drive right at the end. And then we do have a grand total of 24 or so seconds to this man, Nicolator, who, for the Nick Squared team today, well, he's definitely had ups, he's had downs, but he'll be the first driver off of the podium, and he'll pick up an absolutely brilliant haul of points there for the team. He's done them proud, and then it will be Cat Daddy a further 19 seconds behind, who with a late error that we haven't quite seen. Well, he's still in fifth, but he's got DC only 2 seconds behind. Can Cat Daddy get it home for another top 5 of playing race cars? He's been making a habit of top 5s this season. He does. He just about holds on the end with DC for Long Life Motorsport coming all the way from the back of the field to 6th place at the end. Pancakes has got a bit of time to go before he finishes his race, so we do see Epmy Dustin coming through a lap down in 8th place there. Lister's 2 laps down, but I believe that's an erroneous glitch, or it might actually be correct. We've also had Yo Megafish 6 laps down in the end, but who else is to finish this race, ladies and gentlemen? Well, we've got a little bit of time as Biker Pilot crawling around at the moment. He is going to be the next driver who does see the checkered flag, currently in 9th place here, but indeed, he won't be able to catch up to Emmy Duster's already finished, but he will be clear of Garlic Dog, and in the end, the 3.8 racing driver will be bringing on home 9th place when all is said and done as the rain continues to fall here. It's relentless, the rain at this point, but Biker Pilot in the end will find his way through the chicane. He has to navigate his way very tentatively on through, but he does then actually get promoted to 8th. I think Emmy Duster does have a post-race time penalty, that's a black flag being attributed to him, as meanwhile, Pancakes will be your last lead-up finisher there. Well done to the SimCity Racing drive, bringing it home 7th there in the 481, and then we will see Garlic Dog be the last finisher of this race to the checker flag, 10th overall, a lap down in the end, and we can confirm that Epmy Dustin did pick up a black flag drive-through penalty for instant points that he couldn't serve come the checker flag, so he's been given a post-race time penalty. But goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, what a race. But as Knotavin makes his way down, flanked there by Simply Steve and TonLo as well, he'll be absolutely ecstatic about the fact that it's 7 wins and he is looking absolutely unstoppable. Whereas for Simply Steve, it's a return to the podium with a return to the racing, and he'll be proud of that even if it wasn't quite the win. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. And well, here they are. And as we can see in the end, an absolutely entertaining race as we do run out of tape footage in the background there. Knotavin taking the victory, his 7th this season. The man who is looking to try and take every win this season if he can. Can he do what McLaren Honda could not do in their infamous year of Formula 1 racing, where they took every win -1 over the course of the season? We'll have to wait and see, but the Night Racing Tribe definitely on course to perhaps do so, and taking the win here at the Bavaria French Grand Prix for round number 7 of season 12 of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, dedicated to the LMP2. But behind him, Simply Steve, the man who took pole position with that incredible pole lap right at the death of the session. The Speed Squad driver did not have the right strategy then to be able to get the job done and keep the lead. Indeed, a big slide loose after his outlap was the difference, but in the end, he'll be happy a second and fending off TonLo right towards the very end with the BDS Racing drive, throwing everything at it in the closing stages, but indeed, Simply Steve just proving a little bit too resolute. Then it was off the podium there, Nicolator a further 25 seconds behind, but the Nick Square drive enjoyed a brilliant back and forth battle with Cat Daddy over the race distance and DC in the early stages, but Nick Square taking fourth ahead of playing race cars Cat Daddy, who rounded off the top 5, indeed yet to see the podium in some time, but he's almost been there several occasions. Again today, it was a near miss, and DC with an early mistake for Long Life Motorsport having to settle for 6th, only 2 seconds adrift. Pancakes round off the league lap finishers there in 7th place. And the SimCity Racing drive not quite able to make it another top 5, indeed, but indeed also finish inside the top 10. So some good points coming his way. Then we did see Biker Pilot in 8th place there for 3.8 race in the first of lap down drivers. Sadly for Speed Squad's Epmy Dust, it could have been a huge result today. He had the pace, as was demonstrated in practice, and also the qualifying laps he wasn't allowed to finish. But an early instant coming through Grander Curve into Estrel on the open lap really set the tone for his day, and it was a tone where things went backwards rather than forwards. He took 9th place. Then it was Garlic Dog in 10th there for playing race cars. A couple of late instants really costing the chance of some higher points, but still he got to the finish, and also it was a finish there 6 laps down, but still to the checker flag, and you've got to give him a round of applause just like all of them, ladies and gentlemen. Omega there for 3.8 racing, guaranteeing the team have taken a double points finish once again there for the last place spot in 11th. But goodness me, what a race. An absolutely breathtaking race here in the wet of the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. And, well, every round has kept us entertained. And with the conditions today, the entertainment factor has been absolutely through the roof. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now thinking that you want to be on the grid for the Just Two Idiots Championship Series, whether for this season or a future one, or perhaps you're sat there right now just wanting to know more about the Just Two Idiots Championship Series and what goes on behind the scenes, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you go to our official website. That is www.j2ics.com, and if you do so, you'll be confronted with this brilliant website, a very simple to navigate website, which breaks everything down. If you need to know the rules and regulations about us, everything in between previous seasons, it is all here. Indeed, we'd love to see you become a part of the Just Two Idiots Championship Series, alternatively our Cup Series, which we also do run, and there's never been a better time to get on the grid with us. But if you want to skip the website, perhaps you're not one who likes reading, but instead you like to get involved with the community, well, of course, what you can do is go straight to the Beating Hearted community, which is the official Discord invite link available on screen there. And we'd love to have you on the grid, whether you're an esports professional all the way through to a novice racer. There's never been a better time to join the J2ICS. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, what can we say going into our next round? Because next up is Sebring International Raceway for round number 8. And for on Wednesday, the 8th of April 2026, our drivers will be taking on the former Hendricks Army Air Base. But on Thursday, the 9th of April, we'll be bringing you all the race action as if it were live. And we will get to see whether a driver's aspirations for victory and the championship title will take flight. Because for Knotavin, 7 wins in 7 races. The pressure has always been on, but he's withstood it every step of the way. Can he withstand it for an 8th time this season? Can he start to hone in on that potential championship crown? Because if he's able to take an 8th win, it may become almost a formality when we do get to our final 2 rounds. How a close competition continues to follow him, whether it be TonLo, who missed out on 2nd place day to Simply Steve, and Simply Steve coming back with a bang today. We definitely still got plenty of questions to be answered at the very front of the field, and do not rule out questions further down the field, whether it be the battles between Nicolator, Cat Daddy and DC, or Pancakes trying to get the upper hand on the 3.8 racing machines of Biker Pilot and Yomega. So for all that and plenty more, come tune in next time in a week's time as we continue the story of the Sebring International Raceway. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the Just Two Idiots Championship Series. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. You've been tuned to a Paul's production. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay fine, have an absolutely brilliant Easter holiday, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.